Starring Senator Ford.
Good evening.
Harry Hirschfield.
Howdy.
And Joe Laurie Jr.
Hello.
And now, here's Master of Ceremonies, Ward Wilson.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to Can You Top This, our unrehearsed egg roll. Our three wits do not know what jokes have been chosen until the people's representative, Peter Donald, tells them on the air. Our three gagsters have no scripts. They rely on memory and ability to switch jokes and make them fit the subject. If Peter Donald tells your submitted story, you get $10.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer. Then our panelists try to top the score on the laugh meter registered by Peter Donald.
Each time our wits fail to top your score, you win an additional $5, which means you may win $25.
Can You Top This is made possible by our fine sponsor. Won't you please listen to this?
So let's get on with the laughs. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Ready.
Yes, sir.
Here's our first joke this evening. Comes from Harry M. Cook of Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and it's on the subject of railroad. Railroad. So, Pete, you're the engineer. The track is clear, and let her roll.
Well, Frank Allen was on his way down from Buffalo to New York on the train, and his friend and partner in business, Hugo Jayberg, was down. He had to meet him at Grand Central Station. So Hugo gets to Grand Central. He's trying to find out what track this Buffalo train is coming in on. So finally saw an information booth, and there's one of those Irish train callers over there. And he's yelling, he says, the 2:30 from Detroit will be 15 minutes late. It will arrive on track 1. The 2:30 from Detroit will be 15 minutes late. It will arrive on track 1. Look through his notes. He says, the 2:45 from Buffalo will come in on tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The 2:45 from Buffalo will come in on tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And Hugo walked over. He says, for goodness sakes. He says, what's the idea? I'm meeting a friend on the 2:45 from Buffalo. What's all this business about? It's arriving on tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The train caller said, look, mister, I'll let you in on a little secret. The train from Buffalo on this run has got a lady engineer, and we're expecting her to bring it in sideways.
Well, that joke got you off a little on the bias, Peter.
The laugh meter registered 800 for that one, Ward.
Which allows our...
That's good. That's
Sure, it's a good
average.
start. It's $10 at least for Mr. Cook to start off with, and I don't know whether you fellas are going to be generous or not. That's what we're waiting to see. The upraising of hands shows Joe Laurie first. All three hands, too, at that.
Well, one night in the subway, it was jammed and packed, as it usually is, but this was very, very well jammed. And the fellow's standing up reading his paper, and the fellow next to him is almost cheek to cheek with him, looking over his paper. And he's very uncomfortable, and finally he turns to this fellow. He says, say, Bub, he says, I invested 5 cents for this paper. He says, why don't you go out and buy one for yourself? So the guy looks at him and says, is that so? You invested 5 cents in the paper. 5 cents you invested in the paper. He says, yeah. He said, then why don't you take a taxi cab and protect your investment?
Well, you don't need any protection for that one, Joe.
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Topping Mr. Cook's 800, still leaving him with $10. And, Harry, I think your hand was raised second.
Story I like to tell. When Litvinov came here as Russian ambassador, and he went to the capital, they asked him if he wanted to have a nice Russian meal to start it off. He says, no, I am in America now, and I would like an American meal. So part of the meal they gave him, the great dessert that he loved, was a thing called Washington pie, a white cake with a white sauce. And he thought it was wonderful. He said, I must remember this, Washington pie. Well, he had to come to New York from the capital the next day. When he got on the train and he got in the dining car, he said to the colored waiter, above everything else, I would like Washington pie. Have you got Washington pie? He says, yes, sir, we bring it. So when he brought it, he brought a chocolate cake with a chocolate sauce. And Litvinov says, I cannot figure this out. In the capital yesterday, I had Washington pie. It was a white cake with a white sauce. And you're bringing me a Washington pie, which is a chocolate cake with a chocolate sauce. He said, brother, in this country we got 2 Washingtons, George and Booker T.
$10,000 on the laugh eater for that one, Ward.
I just thought, though, it's a good thing that he didn't come up by bus. That's the only thing that saved you.
There was a guy in the subway.
Yeah, I know.
Wait a minute, that's railway. They call it
If the
Interborough
senator
Railway.
gets somebody on a pogo stick, I'm going to go home.
Well, that's railway.
I haven't
anyway-
been in this round yet, you know.
I know. We're waiting, senators.
Senator may have them in a bag.
So far, both of our wits have topped Mr. Cook's 800, leaving him with that same scant $10 he started with. And, Senator, it's up to you to carry on the Christmas spirit or else.
Well, on the subject of railroads, I can say plenty anent the strings of used berry crates that wend their wobbly way up to my hometown. The railroad is known as the Wrong Island Railroad. You know, when you ride on our main line, you have black hair whether you like it or not. Some of these trains run daily, some run Sundays, some run from June 14th to October 12th, although it seems much longer. I don't believe Judge Crater's lost. I think he's gone somewhere on a Long Island train. Well, anyway, Ditsy Baumwartle got a rush of conscience between his ears, and he decided to break the habit of a lifetime and go to work. So he got a job on our railroad as assistant trainman's assistant. But having a very bad memory, he couldn't memorize the stations on the road. So on his first trip, the conductor stuck his head in the front door, and he said, "This train for Riverhead, Aquebogue, Jamesport, Laurel, Mattatuck, Peconic, Southold, Greenport." Ditsy stuck his head in the other door and said, "The same on this end."
The laugh meter registers 600 for that joke.
Well, there were slow trains up there, I guess.
Slow meter, too, that time. Well, since two of our wits did top Mr. Cook's 800 and one didn't, it's a pleasure indeed.
And then a lady said to him, she said, which end of this train will I get off? He said, either end, both ends stop.
Hey, that was 200 better that time. There was an 800 with a tie.
More fun, more jokes coming up in a minute after this word from our sponsor.
And now, let's continue our contest of wit and humor once again. Here's a joke which was sent in by Mrs. Walter Kubiak. I guess that is. I don't know. You can toss for that one. Kubiak, Kubiak or Kubiak of Chicago, Illinois. And the subject of this joke is something I hope you never have to see professionally. Doctor. So, Pete, what do you prescribe?
Well, it's about a country doctor in a little tiny town. And you know how busy they always are. But this particular day, it was winter and everybody had colds. He had the most busy day of his life. Terrible, terrible busy day. In the middle of it all, the kids in high school came down with measles, and all day long his phone kept broadcasting these spot announcements, and he was knocking himself out. And then a blizzard came along. He had to trudge around in the snow. By the time he got home at night, he was just ready to collapse, and he fell in bed. He was the worst day of his life. So 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and he reached for it. He says, "Hello?" Voice on the other end of the phone says, "Hello, Doc." He said, "This is Farmer Brown." He said, "I want you to come right out to my house. My wife is sick." He said, "Out to your house? You live 7 miles out of town." He says, "I know, but this is very important. You better come right out." Oh, he says, "All right, I will." So he got out and he traveled 7 miles through the snowdrifts of this awful, terrible, cold night. And he gets to Farmer Brown's house. He walked in. He says, "What's the trouble?" Farmer says, "Gee, Doc, I'm glad you got here." He says, my wife got fallen arches." He says, "Fallen arches aren't serious." "Well," he says, "these are. Her arches fell through the cellar door, and she was with them at the time." So the doctor said, "Well, let me look at her." Anyway, examined her. He says, "Why," he says, "this patient should have had medical attention a long time ago." He says, "When did she have this awful fall?" "Well," said, "let's see, it must have been about a week ago last Sunday." He said, "A week ago last Sunday?" He says, "Why didn't you call me before? Or at least, why didn't you phone me in the daytime instead of waiting until 3 in a terrible cold morning with a blizzard like this?" He says, "Well, Doc, we know that you got a lot of demands on your time, so just to be considerate, we waited until tonight to call you when you wouldn't be so busy." She died, however. With the joke. The joke was with her.
So did the joke, incidentally. you would have been better off to stay with the fallen arches, Pete.
700 is the score in the laugh meter this time, Ward.
Which gives Mrs. Kubiak $10 to start off with, and our three wits a little latitude there as a matter of 300 to begin with. Senator, do you want to follow the fallen arches?
Yeah, I'll go with the fallen arches. Aki Bop's wife took him to the doctor because he had a growth on his nose. So the doctor looked at it and said, "Why, that's nothing serious. I'll remove it. I'll give him an anesthetic." So Mrs. Bop said, "What's an anesthetic?" The doctor said, "When I give him an anesthetic, he won't know anything." She said, "You don't have to bother with that. He don't know nothing now."
650 is what the laugh meter registered, Ward.
I got Mrs. Kubiak up to $15 now anyway, and... Harry, I think your hand was raised second.
But first, I want to tell something about myself. You know, I've had a cold, more or less, for the last 5 or 6 weeks. And I've been coughing and everything, so a very dear friend of mine, hearing about my cold, gave me a wonderful advice. He says, "Why don't you try to get pneumonia? The doctors know what to do for that." Finnegan went to a Dr. Callahan. He didn't feel well. So he says, the doctor, he says, "I don't feel well, and I don't know. Maybe you could help me." He says, "I'll help you." He says, "I have a vitamin pill I've invented. I could make you look and feel like a 10-year-old boy. A certain amount of treatments, and that's what you'd look like and feel like. 10 years." He says, "What? You could make me like a 10-year-old boy and look like it?" He says, "I'm for that treatment." He says, "All right, I'll start the treatments, but I'd like to have my fee first, $1,000. He says, "Why shall I give you the fee first?" He says, "How do I know that you're going to make me like a 10-year-old boy?" "Oh," he says, "I can make you like a 10-year-old boy, all right. But there's a law about collecting money from a minor."
The laugh meter says 550 on that one, Ward.
And the predecessor, 550.
That wasn't his yet.
No, you'll have to get pneumonia to get it up. I can see that.
Going down. All right.
It's close to freezing. Well, you fellas are very generous. So far, Mrs. Kubiak is now up to $20. And, Joe, I don't know what you're going to do about it, but let's
I don't
listen.
know either. This is the kind I like to tell. A fella meets a half-goofy friend of his, and the goof says, "Hey, you're looking pretty bad." He says, "Well, I am feeling bad." He says, "I'm feeling awful bad. You see, I need an operation, and I don't know about a doctor." So the goof says, "Why don't you go to my doctor?" He says, "He's a young fella, but he's a good doctor." He says, "He is? Is he a skillful surgeon?" He says, "What?" I says, "Is he skillful?" He says, "Gee, he's skillful more people than you'll ever meet."
700 is the score in the laugh meter this time, Ward.
It's sort of sneaked up there.
700.
Well, that ties Mrs.
You know, we need
Kubiak
a doctor
700.
for the gags.
Say, Ward.
Yeah.
Here's a little gag I read not long ago. I don't think it too much on the laugh meter, but I like to tell it anyway. One of those Hollywood starlets, you know, a little blonde. She went to the doctor to find out what was the matter with her throat. So he told her to open her mouth, which she didn't. And then he said, "Now say ah." She said, "I won't." He said, "Why won't you say ah?" She said, "You don't appeal to me."
Well, I see Harry Hirschfield gesticulating badly.
I got a shorty because the average person feels this way about doctors. There's a guy in pain, so the doctor examines him. The next day, the guy still is in pain. Doctor examines him again and says, "You know, your legs are still swollen, but that doesn't worry me." He says, "You know, doctor, if your legs were swollen, it wouldn't worry me either."
No matter what you do, it doesn't get above 700 on this round.
I like the one about thanking a doctor, about the fellow coming up to the doctor and thanking him. He says, "You know, my wife was very sick. I could hardly kiss her. I couldn't even kiss her. That's how sick she was. But she took 2 bottles of your medicine. Now she kisses everybody." I mean, that's the kind of
That
stuff
isn't the answer either, apparently. I think we better get over to a new subject in a hurry. And our next joke comes from Mrs. Oliver Beard. Mentioning jokes, Beard. I don't know. Mrs. Oliver Beard of Barnesville, Georgia. And the subject of this round is raffles. I don't mean crooks. I mean, this is auction raffles, you know. So, Pete, to the highest bidder, and you're it.
Well, there was a raffle at the lodge, and the chairman was one of those big fellas, you know. He got up. He said, "Fellas,
On behalf of the committee, he said, I want to say we have some Jim Dandy door prizes tonight. He said, we have managed to get 10 pairs of beautiful nylon stockings. They are Jim Dandies. And I'm going to draw 10 lucky names out of this little bowl here. I want you to come up as you called and pick the size stocking you want for the little woman.
So he started picking the numbers, and the guys came up, and they started giving their sizes. They got the stockings. Chairman got up again. He said, oh, fellas, I almost forgot to tell you. The committee is sending telegrams to your wives telling them that you are the winners of these beautiful nylon stockings. Fella in the back of the hall jumped up. He says, gosh, if you're going to tell our wives about the stockings, I better change the size of my pair from 9 to 10 and a half.
Well, that's about the size of it that time, Pete.
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Giving Mrs. Beard $25 to start with and putting our 3 wits out for nothing but glory, and we hope 3 good laughs. And first-hand raise belongs to Harry Hirschfield, I believe.
Fellow went to buy a horse from a guy, and the fellow who sold it to him said the horse was great, wonderful. So the guy takes his horse home, puts him in the barn, and as soon as he got in the barn, the horse dropped dead. Now, the fellow who sold it to him heard about it, so he beat it, didn't come back to town for 5 years. And he ran into this guy after 5 years, says, gee, I'm sorry about that horse I sold you. I hear that when you got it to the barn, it dropped dead. The guy said that was wonderful. As soon as I saw the horse drop dead, locked the barn, and I started a raffle for the horse. I sold 20,000 tickets at $1 apiece for that horse. He says, how about the guy that won? Oh, he says he was a little bit sore about it, so I gave him his $1 back.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
So far, 2 1,000s, and next, Joe Laurie Jr.
Well, raffling is gambling, anything like that. So this lieutenant, this lieutenant reports to the colonel. From the general's office, he reports to the colonel, this new colonel, commanding officer, and the colonel reads this letter. He says, the general tells me you're a very fine officer, young man, but that you're a gambler. So what do you gamble on? He says, oh, anything, sweepstakes, raffles. He says, dice, cards. He says, I'll bet you, Colonel, he says, that you have a mole on your back, on your back. I'll bet you $10 that you have a mole on your back. The fellow says, oh, yeah? Figures I'll cure him. So he says, that's a bet. I'll bet you $10. And he takes off his shirt and shows him he has no mole. He says, all right, you win. So he calls up, the colonel calls up the general. He says, well, he says, I cured that young lieutenant from gambling, I think. He says, what did you do? He says, well, he wanted to bet me. In fact, he did bet me that I had a mole on my back. I took off my shirt and showed him that I did, and I won $10 from him. The general says, oh, he's done it again. He says, what do you mean, General? He says, just before he left here, he bet me $100 that he'd have your shirt off 10 minutes after he met you.
That one made the top. 1,000 on the laugh meter.
Giving us a perfect round thus far. And, Senator, so far you're the only delinquent in this round.
Well, of course, if Joe can stray a little bit on the subject of raffling to gambling, there's no reason why I can't.
No, I don't see any
Up in
reason.
my hometown, there's an institute that studies astronomy. They call it Custer Institute, and they had a spare telescope one time, and they raffled it off. Well, a local by the name of Homer Fosfelter won it, and he took it home, and every night he would study the heavens with his telescope that he'd won in the raffle. And one night he said to his wife, it's going to rain tomorrow. She said, how do you know? He said, my corn's hurt.
After that, you could say, oh, my aching back.
Well, looks like only 400 on the laugh meter now, Ward.
After all, you were shooting for a star anyway, because Mrs. Beard already had 1,000, so truth to tell, we sent Mrs. Beard $25.
Well, I was a guest of a hotel who...
I didn't even get it out yet.
He was a guest of a hotel. He was a steady guest. They lived there all the time. He was a very generous tipper. So one morning he came down to breakfast, and the regular waiter wasn't there. So he said to the substitute waiter, he said, where's Charlie? He said, oh, he won't wait on you anymore. He raffled you off last night, and I won you.
A little bit
Raffle.
better. 600.
Another round of jokes will be coming up right after these important words from our fine sponsor.
Now, here's a joke sent in by Miriam I. Golden of Red Bank, right near my hometown of Deal. Red Bank, New Jersey. And it's on the subject of trip. Not to fall down, fellas. Vacation, something like that. So, Pete, let's take off.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Favutnik had been out to the country for a picnic. Been out there for a picnic, and they're driving home, and she's talking away.
She said, Abercrombie, was that a snippy picnic? I thought I would die laughing when you sat down on the beehive.
He says, that was a beehive. It felt to me more like a B-29. So I think the tail gunner got me, too.
She says, Abe, you're always grumbling. Well, don't grumble. Watch where you're driving. You almost hit the Ford V8.
He says, who's worried about a Ford V8? I already got trouble from the Pickles V8.
She said, speaking of food, I'm all of a sudden very hungry. She says, my appetite is biting me.
He says, Daphne, please, on this road, there's not even a Howard Johnstein restaurant.
She says, Abe, half a mile back we passed a good humorous man with the jingle bells.
He says, you want I shall back up the car half a mile?
She says, no, you walk back and I'll just sit here and wait in the strudel baker. That's all. You go back.
So he stops the car, and she waits, and he goes all the way back a half mile to the fellow with the ice cream, comes all the way back to the car. He said, all right, Mrs. Hungry, I purchased you a jumbo ice cream cone. I hope you're satisfied.
She says, satisfied? Of course. Oh, is that a beauty? Oh, is that wonderful? Oh, he's got nuts and cherries, and he's got 2 pairs of ice cream. Oh, is that beautiful? She says, Abe, how can they give you so much ice cream for a nickel?
He says, Daphne, with 2 dippers of ice cream, it's not a nickel. It costs a dime.
She said, a dime? You take it right back. For a dime, it's not enough.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
Giving Miss Golden $25 automatically, and our 3 wits are out on a futile chase once again. Harry, how about you?
I heard a crazy story. 2 guys wanted to go west to rough it, to get the life of the West. So they go out there, and they see an Indian. And this Indian prophesied the weather this day. He said, we will have rain 4 o'clock. So the 2 fellows says, you see, abysmal people, primitive man, their instinct, they know. And it rained at 4 o'clock. Next day, he said, we'll have sunshine, then become cloudy, and then rain. And they had it. Sunshine, cloudy, and rain. The fellow said, you see anything so primitive? Every day, he said, it'll rain or shine, and it was. Then for 2 days, he gave no prophecy at all. So they said to him, you're not making any more prophecy on the weather. He says, no can do now. Radio not working.
Hey, 1,000 on the laugh meter for that one, Ward.
Well, let's see how fast you fellas can get 2 quick gags in. Senator, how about
I'll
you?
tell you, quickie. A fellow wired his friend out in the West. He said, send me $100 or I'll have to go to the poorhouse Friday. The friend wired back, wait till Saturday and I'll go with you.
Another 1,000 on that quickie, Senator. And Joe, how about you?
Yeah, this woman was an hour late meeting her friend, so she said, where was you? She says, I was down to the depot. I had to meet Montgomery. He says, where was Montgomery? Says, he went to Atlantic City. For 2 weeks, he was bathing in the sun. He says, bathing in the sun? Is he tan? She says, what are you talking about tan? He's almost 11.
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Well, friends, join Can You Top This again next week. Same time, same gang, other jokes, some new, some old. Until then, we remain yours for bigger and better laughs.
Happy New Year, Ford.
Same from Harry Hirschfield.
Happy New Year, Junior.
Same from Peter Donald.
Ditto, Ward Wilson.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer, saying so long, and take care of yourself until we meet again next time. Can You Top This is a Roger Bauer production distributed exclusively by the Nostalgia Broadcasting Corporation.
Can You Top This? Starring Senator Ford.
Good evening.
Harry Hirschfield.
Howdy.
And Joe Laurie Jr.
Hello.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer. And now, here is your master of ceremonies, Ward Wilson.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to Can You Top This, our unrehearsed Wheeze Whirlpool. Our 3 wits do not know what jokes have been chosen until the people's representative, Peter Donald, tells them on the air.
Then our panelists try to top the score on the laugh meter registered by Peter Donald.
Our 3 gagsters have no scripts. They rely on memory and ability to switch jokes and make them fit the subject.
Can You Top This is made possible by our fine sponsor. Won't you please listen to this?
So, on with the laughter. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Ready?
I guess so.
You just guessed so. Well, that's very good. Our first joke this evening comes from Louis Stern of Spivak, Colorado, and it's on the subject of receptions, gentlemen. Receptions. So, Peter Donald, any kind, that's all right. Peter Donald, will you give the joke a welcome reception?
Well, it's about a very swanky lady, Mrs. Van Mortgage II, and she gave a reception, big swanky party for a lot of people, and she made it a musicale. She hired this eminent pianist to entertain the guests, a fellow, incidentally, by the name of Iturbi. You've heard of Jose. This guy was his brother, Lauze. And, matter of fact, he used to play with the big Philharmonic Orchestra, except one night when he was supposed to be playing piccolo in the finale, he was playing pinochle in the basement, so they got... Anyway, he played quite brilliantly for about an hour, and finally he got up and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "for an encore, I shall play the Grieg Concerto. My next offering is the Grieg Concerto." And he played this beautiful Grieg Concerto, and he got all through, and everybody applauded. And a little guy jumped up. He says, wait a minute. He says, "You got to play that again." Well, I said, "Very well, sir." And he played the whole concerto again. More applause. The fellow says, No, don't go away from the piano. You got to play that again." So he played it again. Next time, the little guy jumped up. He says, "Now you got to play it just once more." The pianist said, "Well, sir, I am very flattered." He said, "I've never met such a devotee of music, but why are you so fond of the Grieg Concerto?" He says, "Why do I like the Grieg Concerto? Don't be silly, because I'm a Greek myself."
700 is the score in the laugh meter this time, Ward.
Peter, that was sort of a Greek to the audience, too. It got up to 700, however. We automatically give Mr. Stern $10, and Joe Laurie had his hand up first.
Void for it.
Greeks did.
Excuse me. I thought I had one, Ward. I haven't got one.
All right, let's go back and have
No, I don't think I had a good one anyway.
Well, apparently Harry Hirschfield does, so we'll call on him.
I got a couple in mind on. This is receptions, huh? Well, I can use it in the general sense. When I want to tell you as a preface first, when Eisenhower came here, you remember they planned the big festivities for him and everything? And on the reception committee to meet him and everything at the bigger festivities was Mr. Schnutz. And Mr. Schnutz was so happy that he had to go to this thing that he started to drink a little bit. Every saloon he stopped and had a drink, and he had another drink. And he was getting good and cockeyed. Instead of going to Fifth Avenue, he staggered into Central Park. And he bumped into a tree. 2 feet away, dropped in and bumped into another tree. Then he bumped into another tree, and he says, "I think I'll sit down and wait till the parade passes." I want to tell about a certain guy. He was one of those fellows looking for trouble. And he was looking for trouble, and he got it. So he got into an awful fight, and they ripped his nose off completely. Completely his nose came off. And naturally was embarrassed about being without a beezer all this time. And he'd stay at home and finally figured he ought to go out. So finally was invited by a party of some close friends. And he came there, but the head of the party said to their family, says, "Now, when he comes here, I don't want you to say anything about his nose. Receive him as if nothing had happened. Because he's very sensitive. Now, very, very quiet. Say nothing. Just keep going. But you, Tommy, you especially, don't say anything about his nose now." So finally this guy came to the party, and they were sitting around, and they received him very naturally. But little Tommy kept looking at him, and then he suddenly blurted out and says, "Mama, why did you tell me not to say anything about his nose, especially when he ain't got any?"
Well, maybe his nose couldn't smell, and that joke certainly didn't, Harry. That got 1,000.
Harry certainly was belittling there. A fellow loses his nose, and Harry says he was embarrassed.
Well, he blew that.
I didn't put my hand up, but I guess it doesn't make any difference. I'm talking anyway. So, this is a different kind of a reception, though. It's not a party or anything like that. Fred Allen is one of the fastest guys in the world on the trigger, you know. And one day a very conceited actor said to him, "Fred, that new show I'm in is a hit. And I'm terrific in it. I'm colossal. I'm something." He says, "Do you know that every time I walk out on that stage, the whole audience sits there open-mouthed?" Fred says, "That's an awful lot of people to be yawning at the same time."
Well, Senator, they didn't yawn at that joke, certainly.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
Which also tops Mr. Stern's 700.
I know another one.
Has Joe got
you have another one?
I've got a...
Was that a preface or the?
No, as long as it got 1,000 counted.
I think it's pretty smart. Joe, did you think of your missing
I've
joke?
been trying to figure. I just got a very short one. I just can't think of any. But about Mrs. Guinness comes back from a party, and her friend says, "How was the reception? How was the Doyle's reception?" She says, "Oh, it wasn't much." She was very stiff and formal. She says, "Stiff and formal, was it?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Mrs. Doyle was formal and Mr. Doyle was stiff."
Hey, 1,000 on the laugh meter for that one, Ward.
Joe, you're doing very well with those.
Don't go away. We'll have another round of jokes in a few moments.
Continuing now our contest of wit and humor, the next joke was sent in by Captain Joseph J. Bryla of Indian Town Gap Military Reservation, Pennsylvania. The subject of this joke will be soldier. Soldier. We're quite familiar with that topic right now, so Peter Donald, will you give it the forward march?
Well, this happened at an Army camp, and it was the regular Saturday morning inspection, at which time the soldier must display all of his personal equipment, all the clothing and shoes and socks and the razor and toothbrushes and 3 razor blades for a week's supply, for 1 week's supply. He must have the 3 razor blades. So this particular inspecting captain came along, and he got up to one soldier, and he looked over the equipment, and then he said, "Private, don't you know you got to display equipment for 1 week's supply?" So the fellow said, yeah. He said, "That's what I got right there. Don't mess it up, neither. That's what I got right there." Officer said, "I'm sorry, you only have 1 razor blade. That isn't enough for 1 week." He said, "Oh, yes, it is. That blade there is enough for a week." He says, "Enough for a whole week?" He said, "Yes, it's even enough for a month, that blade is." He said, "Enough for a month?" He says, "Yeah, even might be for a year, that blade." He said, "Ridiculous. How could 1 blade last you a year?" He says, "That's easy. I haven't even started to shave yet."
1,000 on the laugh meter. The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
And so we automatically send Mr. Captain Bryla $25, and you fellas are just out for the laughs. And I hope you are, at least. Joe Laurie Jr., I think, had his hand up first.
Joe was so slow on the last one. He's first this time. He got a little encouragement.
Lieutenant Colonel Hoffman told us at a dinner the other night, bears repeating. This is a preface, Ward, doesn't count. It's about this fella this general putting on a medal on this fella, and he, in front of this whole company, he says, "This man is a brave man. He's a soldier, and I'm proud to decorate him with this medal." And he says he was on sentinel duty, and he just walking up and down his post, and he was surrounded by the enemy. But he didn't care. He just kept walking up and down his post while he was surrounded all around him by the enemy. And this fellow said, "General, was that the enemy?" He says, "Yeah. Who do you think they were?" He says, "I thought they were my own troops." He told him much better. But so what I want to tell is, Mrs. Epstein says, "Mrs. Rappaport says, the officers in our army are very untidy." She says, "You say the officers in our army are untidy?" "Why, Mrs. Epstein, that's treason." He says, "I got a treason for saying it." He says, "What's your treason?" She says, "Look, I got a letter from my Montgomery." He says, "Dear Mom, today I had to clean up the officers' mess again."
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Hi, Captain Bryla, but you can't top him. And Senator Ford, I think, had his hand up second.
Well, a fellow, a sort of a gigolo, was chasing a millionaire's daughter, and somebody asked him later how he's making out. And he said, "No runs, no hits, no errors." I just threw that in for the ball players in the audience, that's all. I know a lot of soldier gags, though. I can think of a good one, I had no clue. Probably picked the wrong one. Well, here's some year or so ago when General Vinegar Joe Stillwell, the old general with the wrinkled face, was over in China. He used to like to wander around the front lines without his insignia. One day he was fording a stream, and a private said to his companion, he said, "Look at that poor old man. You know, some of those gall-down draft boards will take anything."
1,000 on the laugh meter.
Senator, but since you're in a hopeless spot trying to top Captain Bryla's 1,000, you're still standing still, and we haven't heard from Harry Hirschfield
Well,
yet.
there are a lot of soldier stories. One I want to toss in quick. There's one soldier says to the other, "What were you doing with those 3 whacks?" He says, "I was trying my deuce to get rid of the other 2." But a fella was telling, I was getting letters from his girl all the time, and he was boasting to his friend. He said, "When I get into home, oh, boy, does she love me? Does she want to see me? Oh, boy, well, it's going to be great. You know how that girl loves me." So I met him a few days later after he got back. He said, "You see your girl?" He said, "Oh, boy." He says, "How did she treat you?" He says, "I never saw a girl love a guy like she loves me. Oh, she kissed me and hugged me, looked at me for an hour, ran her hands through my hair and my head, and she pinched my cheeks and everything, and I finally said, 'Snap out of it, kid, let's go stepping.' And we went out stepping. And the fellow says, 'How much did you spend on her?' He says, $2.75. He says, $2.75, that's not much. He says, that's all she had.
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
That's a perfect round for all you fellas.
Harry's kind of reminds me of a gag about the 2 girls were talking. One said, "I was out with 2 servicemen last night," and the other one said, "What were they?" The first one said, "Well, one was a corporal, and the other one didn't have any money either."
Is this the second round we're starting now, Senator?
Huh?
Is this the second round we're starting now?
Oh, I don't go in chronological disorder. I just throw them in.
We officially get into the third round, and our next joke comes from Sylvia Roos of Baltimore, Maryland. The subject this time is something I'm sure all 3 of you are quite familiar with, gentlemen. Marriage. Matrimonial bliss.
All 4 of us.
You want to bet?
Peter, I hope you're wedded to this joke.
Okay, this is about my old friend Sadie DeKalb, the Brooklyn Brunhilde, this wonderful gal. And she's walking along the street one day, and she met old Mr. Gottgeld. He's a millionaire, very rich fellow, he's loaded with dough. Just to give you an idea, he wears a chinchilla toupee. That's how rich the man is. Loaded with dough. So anyway, she walked up and she said,
Hello, Mr. Gottgeld. Gee, how are the old arteries today? You're still suffering from them Syracuse veins you used to have? Or is it just that lumbago that used to trouble you? He said, "No, Sadie," he said, "I'm suffering, but this is not from ailments. He said, it's from love."
she looked at it.
She said, "Why, you old Van Johnson, you."
Believe me, you're no van. You're a Surrey with no fringe on top. Believe me.
He said, "Well, now, I'll tell you my problem." He says, I want to ask your advice about this, Sadie. He said, "I have fallen in love with a young girl of 21. Now, I want to propose marriage to this girl. I have $1 million. I can give her everything in the world. But I'm 60 years old. Now, do you think that maybe it would be a little better for me if I told her that I was only 50?
Oh, well, that's quite a predicament. That's a mess, isn't it? Because, gee, I don't know. You $1 million. You're stating you could give her everything in the world. You want to marry this girl, 21, and you ask me if I think it'd be better if you told her you were 50 instead of 60? Says, well, as a matter of fact, you know, if you ask me, I think it would be better if you told her about the $1 million and then said you were 85.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
So once again, you gentlemen are just out for the laughs, and Harry Hirschfield had his hand up first.
I think I have a new one, and I think it's certainly a crazy one. A fella got married.
That's the subject.
It is the subject, and you're crazy. A fella got married, and after a while his wife died, and he married a second time. And he said to the second wife, "Now listen, I don't care how you change the house around, but up in that closet is my first wife's hat. I picked it out for her. Leave it stay there. I like it." So the second wife died. And he said to the third wife, "I don't care how you change the house, but don't change those 2 ladies' hats up there for my former wives. I picked them out." She says, "No, I won't change it, but I'll tell you this. The next hat that goes up there will be a derby."
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Hi, Miss Roos, that you didn't top her. A very good story, and Joe Laurie was the trial.
There's a lot of jokes on marriage. This one, just a preface, this doesn't count about the fellow was talked to death by his wife. Oh, he couldn't get over it. She'd talk him deaf, dumb, and blind. So finally he says to his friend, he says, oh, if my wife ever dies, he says, if she ever dies, and I get married again, I'll jump in the ocean and marry a mermaid. So what's the idea of marrying a mermaid? He said, because as soon as she opens her mouth, it'll fill with salt water. Don't matter. But what I want to tell is about a fella. Tells his friend, he says, you know, Ben, you ought to get married. He says, oh, I don't want to get married. He says, yes, marriage is a wonderful thing. It's just especially the romance. He says, romance is marvelous. You get a girl, and he says, oh, you go out in the woods, and you go down a lake with a canoe and paddle a canoe, and beautiful moonlight night, and you play a ukulele, and you sing. There's no... He says, there's no fun in that. There's no fun in that. I did it. He says, you did what? He says, I went out in the woods. I was on the lake and paddling a canoe and singing and everything. The moon was out and everything. He says, well, he says, it's all according to what girl you have with you. He says, oh, you're going to have a girl?
1,000 on the laugh meter.
You too tied, Miss Roos. And, Senator, how about you in this round with Mary?
Well, I was, I always thought that they put ropes along the aisle to keep the groom from running away. Not much of a joke. Two men were talking. One said, I'm a man of very few words. The other one said, I'm married, too.
That one made the top. 1,000 on the laugh meter.
And all of you gentlemen got 1,000 on that round, including Peter. So it's a perfect round.
We'll be right back with our next round of jokes after these few commercial words.
Now, here's a joke sent in by Miss Rebecca Urbank of Peninsula, Ohio, and it's on the subject of instruction. Instruction. So, Peter, I hope you'll take a few and see what you can do with Miss Urbank's joke.
Well, this is about Abercrombie Fafufnik. And Mr. Fafufnik bought one of these brand new post-war cars, not a Jeep, it's a Jeep, got all the stuff on it. So he drove it home, and he was very proud, and he showed it to his wife, and she said, oh, isn't that gorgeous? Hey, that's such a car. Oh, it's so swanky. She said, what is that, an Oldsmobile or something? What is that? She said, when I look at the car right away, I want to learn to drive. I'm going to learn to drive the car. So he said, Daphne, he says, Daphne, darling, he says, sweetie puss, he says, you just said a mouthful, forget it. She says, now, what are you talking about? She says, my girlfriend, Turalura Rabinowitz, drives a car. She's very good, too. She can drive backwards at 70 miles an hour and makes 3 U-turns in a row without ever once getting off the sidewalk. She's wonderful. She says, now, you'll teach me how to drive the car, that's all. So he couldn't do anything about it. So he started teaching her to drive the car, and finally he got her going along pretty good. And she said, darling, she said, you've got to explain all the parts of the car because I don't know which is the carburetor and which is the pedestrian. You've got to tell me. He said, all right. He said, I'll elucidate for you. He says, over here we have the steering wheel. He says, it is called the steering wheel because we steer with it. That is why we call it the steering wheel. You got that? She said, I got it. He said, all right. He says, here is the windshield. It is a windshield because it shields us from the wind. You got that? She said, I got it. He says, you see, every part of the car has got a definite purpose. Now, here is the gear shift. We call it the gear shift because we shift the gears with it. So as this is going along, all of a sudden they come to a red light. She doesn't stop. She drives the car right through the red light, and scrunch, she goes right into a car ahead of her, knocks both cars flying. Her husband comes to. He puts his upper plate back in his mouth. He says, no, Mrs. Green Hornet. He says, what's the idea? You could kill somebody. He says, why did you have to go through the light like that? She says, now, don't get picky with me. She says, didn't you tell me that everything in the car was for a definite purpose? He says, yeah. She says, all right. So on the front of the car, we got a bumper, so I thought I'd bump somebody.
Up. 1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
So all of you fellas are just out for laughs now, and Harry Hirschfield, I guess, wants to tackle it first.
With a help situation as it is, they hired a butler in the very, at the home of Miss Van Eppes, and they get this butler, and he's a goof. And they're instructing him in the amenities of the place and everything. And he says, and of course, you know how to telephone? He said, yeah. Just then the phone rang. He says, well, all right, answer the phone. They got on the phone, and he said, Van Eppes residence. You don't say. You don't say. You don't say. And when he hung up, he says, who was it? He says, you didn't say.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
But it's only ties, Miss Erbank. We'll listen to Senator Ford next.
Well, this could have fit up a couple of rounds up there on soldiers, too. A sentry was on duty one night, and he thought he saw a furtive figure in the darkness. He said, "Who goes there?" And the boy said, "Friend with bottle." He said, "Friend pass, bottle halt."
1,000 on the laugh meter.
How about you,
Yeah, I've
Lori?
got one about this new servant girl and the mistress. She never cooked before, so the mistress instructed her what to do with the chicken. And the next day she says, "Well, Bridget," she says, "did you clean and wash the chicken as I told you?" She says, "Oh, I followed your instructions to the dot. I cleaned it all thoroughly. Then you said to wash it, and last night when I took my bath, I put it in with me." So the next girl come along.
Thank you very much, Joe. We'll be generous and give you 900 on that joke. It bounced off the 1,000.
Senator hit 4 1,000s tonight?
Well, that's fair enough. We'll congratulate him after.
What do you mean fair? It's perfect.
Don't tell him now or he's liable to get conceited. But since none of you
you're
gentlemen...
starting again, eh?
Well, it seems that's all the time we're going to have tonight, folks. So I'd like to ask everyone to join Can You Top This, originated by Senator Ford. Next week, same time, same gang, other jokes, some new, some old. Until then, we remain yours for bigger and better laughs.
Edward Ford.
Harry Hirschfield.
Joe Laurie Jr.
Peter Donald.
Ward Wilson.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer, saying so long, and take care of yourself until we meet again next time.
Can You Top This? Starring Senator Ford.
Good evening.
Harry Hirschfield.
Howdy.
And Joe Laurie Jr.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer. And now, here is your master of ceremonies, Ward Wilson.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to Can You Top This, our unrehearsed Wheeze Whirlpool. Our three wits do not know what jokes have been chosen until the people's representative, Peter Donald, tells them on the air.
Then our panelists try to top the score on the laugh meter registered by Peter Donald.
Our three gagsters have no scripts. They rely on memory and ability to switch jokes and make them fit the subject.
Can You Top This is made possible by our fine sponsor. Won't you please listen to this?
So let's get on with the laughs. Are you ready, fellers?
Ready?
I shouldn't wonder.
Okay, and I shouldn't either, Senators. Let's go. Our first joke this evening comes from Miss Marie Downey of Harwichport, Massachusetts, and it's on the subject of something Mama may have brought up to you once or twice in your earlier days, reprimand. Reprimand. So, Pete, if you tell it well, we won't scold you. And here we go.
Now, this happened out in India, in the province of Salamistan up there near Delhi, and there's a very, very stuffy, fussy British colonel inspecting the troops, and nobody liked this guy. Very, very fussy. So he's inspecting the company, and he stopped in front of one private. He says, "You know, this is disgraceful, sir. You call yourself a soldier. There's a speck of dust on your third button. Your moustache is unpressed. Now, that's disgusting, sir. Did you polish your rifle this morning?" The soldier looked at him. He said, "No." He said, "No? No what?" He said, "No polish." "My dear sir," he says, "now look at you. Look at you. You're a disgrace to the corps. May I remind you, sir, we're here to keep up the prestige of our government. What do you suppose the native thinks of such conduct as yours? What would happen if one of your officers behaved like this?" Well, he says, "I don't know, Colonel, but," he says, I seen a captain racing down the main street at 2 o'clock this morning, and he was full of liquid enthusiasm, and he was singing at the top of his lungs, and he was pushing a wheelbarrow." He said, "What? You have the insolence to accuse a captain of His Majesty's Army of singing in the street and pushing a wheelbarrow, and you expect me to believe this? Who was the captain?" He says, "I don't know, Colonel, but he was probably a friend of yours because you were in the wheelbarrow."
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
We have two hands up raised, and eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we'll give a listen to Little Joe.
Well, Montgomery was taking his girl home one night. It was raining, terrible rain, and they stop in front of the door, and there's a large, big puddle there. So she says, "Montgomery, why don't you put your coat over the puddle so I can step on it?" He says, "Because coats cost money. That's why I don't put the coat over the puddle." She says, "Well, so Volteroli did it for Our Lady." He says, "Who?" She says, "Raleigh. He says, "Well, if I had a tobacco business like his, I'd do it too."
Hey, 1,000 on the laugh meter for that one, Ward.
And the next Herculean effort is going to be from Harry Hirschfield.
Fellow walks up to another guy in a saloon, and he says to him, do you know Sadie Blivitz? The guy says, well, I look in a book. And he takes out a little red book, and he says, yeah, I know Sadie Blivitz. I know Sadie Blivitz. He says, she got red hair. Could you describe her? He said, let me look in a book. Yeah, she got red hair. She's kind of a big dame, kind of sloppy big dame. Yeah, that's Sadie Blivitz. Fellow said, did you ever have her out? So, yeah, I took her to a cafe one night. Gee, is that a dame? Oh, few drinks, she began to drooling. She kept falling down into dancing, fighting with the waiters, fighting with the taxicab driver. Fighting, oh, terrible. Fella says, listen, I'm her husband, and I want no more of that. He says, neither do I. Why do you think I scratch her off the list?
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Who was reprimanding whom in that?
Well, guy's out with the guy's wife. Oh, and he's reprimanding.
He wasn't even reprimanded. He's in cahoots, apparently.
Well, it happened to come the last minute. Well,
it's a good thing you didn't have to top anything that time. That's all I'm
I'll stick
telling
with
you.
Harry on that one.
Well, Senator is sitting
I'm
there.
out of this thing. I mean, I'm not in the argument.
I'm
just saying, I
Strictly
like
neutral.
Harry. Hold on.
That's a real solid answer. Well, Senator, you look in a pensive mood there, and we haven't heard from you yet, so let's do it.
Well, Al Gary, the radio writer, told me a couple of gags the other day, one of which seems to fit in here all right. It seems that a bachelor had a parrot. It was a very talkative little cuss, and every time the bachelor would bring some girls up into his apartment for cocktails and drinks and stuff, the parrot would make all sorts of remarks. One day he brought 2 blondes in there, and the parrot made cracks about peroxide and about one of them inherited a beauty from her father who owned a drugstore and things like that. So the bachelor got a little bit tired of it, and he said, now look, the next crack you made or every remark you make, I'm going to pull out a feather out of you. Well, he pulled a number of feathers out, and still it didn't stop the parrot. So the bachelor took the parrot and stuffed it in the icebox. Well, in the icebox there was a chicken that was all plucked and no head, no feet, ready to be roasted. And the parrot looked at the chicken and said, gee, you must have made some awful cracks.
1,000 on the laugh meter. The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
That's our first perfect round of the evening, but...
We'll be right back with our next round of jokes after these few commercial words.
See, here's our next joke, actually, which comes from S. Brewer of Chicago, Illinois. And the subject of this round is something I have no doubt you've had many altercations with in your past. Teacher. So, Pete, I hope you have a lot of apt pupils.
Well, over in Brooklyn, this gal Sadie DeKalb had been going to night school, and she did pretty good. She got a nice education. She graduated with a Ph.D., that means perfect dope, and she decided that with this education she should use it. So she got a part-time job as a teacher in one of the schools out in the borough of Brooklyn. So she did pretty good, but after 2 weeks, she asked one of the pupils to bring his mother with him to school. So the kid brings the mother. The mother wanted to know what it was. So Sadie said,
Listen, Mrs. Glockenspiel, she says, I got to talk to you about that son of yours in my class. Oh, he's so perturbing. Oh, he's driving me nuts, that kid.
So the mother said, why, Mr. Kalb, Junior is a little angel. He's also the smartest child in the neighborhood. Now, what is your complaint about my little angel?
She says, well, the thing that's driving me crazy is he's always asking questions. Oh, questions all the time. Every time I pass his desk, questions.
So the mother said, well, after all, Mr. Kalb, it's your job as a teacher to answer him. And as a matter of fact, I thought asking questions was a sign of intelligence.
She says, yeah, it usually is. But your little angel keeps asking, what you doing tonight, Toots? How about going to the movies?
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Mr. Brewer has 25 clams salted away already. Our 3 wits are chasing after zephyrs once again. And let's see. hardy souls we have here, willing to step in where angels fear to tread. The first one, Harry Hirschfield.
Well, I got a couple in my mind, two little shorties. One I want to toss in. The teacher said, Sammy, can you make a sentence with the word avoid? He said, yeah. But he stays there. Doesn't do anything. She says, well, go ahead. She said, you could give a sentence with the word avoid. He says, I can. Give me avoid. And the other one is the teacher takes the pupils for zoology class, takes her to the zoo. And right away, little Sammy sees the hippopotamus. He says, what a terrible-looking animal. Wee, what an awful-looking thing. Wee, wee, wee. Is that awful? Is that a terrible-looking thing? She says, that's a hippopotamus. He says, how could they make such a terrible thing like that? How is that an awful-looking animal? She says, can you give me the plural for hippopotamus? He says, there. Who would want two of them?
Well, Harry, avoid to the wise is sufficient, and on both counts that time.
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Keeping our round intact thus far, and Senator is either adjusting his glasses or has his hand up. Which, Senator?
I had my hand up. I know a couple of gags about schools. Well, this particular one is about a teacher who was trying to demonstrate a simple experiment in the generating of steam. So he held up a tin can and he said to the class, what have I in my hand here? And the student said, a tin can. He said, that's right. Is it animate or inanimate? The kid said, it's inanimate. He said, that's right. Now, how can I take this tin can and with a simple experiment make a force that has speed and power and almost beyond control? The kid said, tie it to a dog's tail.
Well, that was the preface. You said you knew a couple. I thought we were going to follow.
Yeah, you want another one?
Yeah, if you want to.
Teacher said to a kid, what do they raise in wet climates? And he said, umbrellas.
That one made the top. 1,000 on the laugh meter.
They both flicked up there, you too. That was, this is a perfect round going again here. Joe, it's in your lap this time.
I'll get the counsel again. This is about a Sunday school teacher. He was teaching a class on the east side, and he says to the boys, he says, now, boys, we'll see what you learned last Sunday. You remember about Samson and the Philistines? Now, Skinny Shaner? He says, yes, sir. He says, tell me, what did Samson slay the Philistines with? He says, Samson slayed the Philistines with, so the teacher, to help him, points to his jaw. And little Skinny Shaner sees it. He says, oh, I know, a jawbone of an ass.
Up. 1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward. Hey, 1,000 on the laugh meter for that one, Ward.
Giving us a perfect round that time.
Don't go away. We'll have another round of jokes in a few moments.
Here's our next joke of the evening, sent in by Miss Jewel Lynn of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it's on the subject of something you may have a slight knowledge of, housekeeping. So, Peter, make it a clean sweep.
Well, a bunch of the ladies of the neighborhood were having a little get-together, and they all started bragging about their housekeeping. So one says, you know, my husband tells me I'm the greatest housekeeper in the world because every Monday I have all the wash done and out on the line by noon at the very latest. So there's one little woman in the corner who's getting sick of all this bragging.
She says, that's housekeeping. She says, that's speed of washing. Drop dead.
So another woman says, well, she says, I'm considered a wonderful housekeeper. She says, my floors are waxed by 10 o'clock in the morning. Always waxed by 10 o'clock.
She says, that's waxing. Drop dead.
So another one says, well, I have my housework done before lunchtime. I have the dinner half prepared, waiting for the finishing touches, everything done by 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
She says, that's cooking. Drop dead.
So this woman said, is that so? Well, she says, how good is your housekeeping?
She said, how good is my housekeeping? Listen, girls, every day I got the house cleaned, the lunch dishes washed, and the beds made before the family even gets up already.
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
And I think Harry Hirschfield's hand was raised first.
Well, there's a crazy story running around town. I don't think it's been told on the air yet. A panhandler comes to our house, and the housewife comes out and says, "What do you want?" He said, "Gee, I haven't eaten any food in 4 days. I'm awful hungry." She says, "Do you like cold noodle soup?" He says, "I'll eat anything." He says, "Come tomorrow. It's warm yet."
You need any information as to what happened then, Harry?
The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Making 2 1,000s in a row in this round. And let's see. Senator, I think your hand was raised second.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Sam Funbottom were always arguing around the house about how the house should be kept and how it shouldn't be kept. Quarrel, knock down, and drag out domestic arguments all the time. And finally she said to him, she said, "Sam, just look at our cat and dog, how peaceful they are on the hearth there. They never quarrel." He said, "No, they don't, but tie them together and see what happens."
1,000 on the laugh meter.
Now, as we listen to Joe Laurie.
Jerry Colonna told me once some time ago that Fitz, this is one of his goofy gags. It's about a fella comes home and his wife is crying, and she says, "Well, how's the supper?" He says, "Oh, terrible. I did all my housework today, and then I fixed the turkey." He says, "Well, that's what I'm waiting for the turkey. What's the matter? Where's the supper? Where's the turkey?" He says, "Well, I made a mistake." She says, "I took all those vitamin B pills and stuffed the turkey with them instead of the rice." He says, "So what?" He says, "Now the turkey is holding the oven door and won't let me open it."
Well, you fellas did it again.
That one made the top. 1,000 on the laugh meter.
To continue our contest of wit and humor, the next joke was sent in by Clement J. Brophy of Erie, Pennsylvania. And the subject of this joke will be painter. Painter.
Painters?
Painter. Singular. Yeah, with the brush, Senator. I know they can't see your gestures on the air very well. Peter Donald, will you give this one the brush?
Well, it's about little Paddy Terence Aloysius Dennis Mulvaney, Cuban boy, and he was a sign painter, and he traveled around all over the country, and he'd get to a new town, and he'd paint a lot of signs, make enough money to get to the next town. So he got in this one town, and he stopped at the first bar he saw, a very beautiful place called the Little Gypsy DT Room. And he walked in there.
He says, "Oh, bartender, come here, come here." He says, "I want to talk with you." He said, "Did you want any signs painted or anything like that?" He says, "Oh, my, I paint beautiful signs. Oh, my, I do them beautiful. With Venus de Milo and Minnie de Mouso, all kinds of things. What do you want? I'll paint anything in the world."
Bartender says, "All right." He says, "I'll give you a chance at it." He says, "Paint me a sign on that mirror." Fella did. Bartender said, "That's not bad. That's pretty good." He says, "I know a lot of other saloon keepers around the town who would like some signs made." He says, "I'll have somebody watch the bar here, and I'll take you around." So he went down to all his cronies' places, and they stopped in at every saloon. And the fella painted his sign, and then they had a couple of drinks. And then they go in another place, he painted his sign, have another couple of drinks. Then another place, and get another couple of drinks. Another place. Went all over town, stopping in for drinks. So finally they got back to the original saloon.
The little guy says, "You've been very kind to me. You have been very kind to me. I appreciate it a lot." He says, "To show what I feel for you," he says, "I'm going to paint a beautiful sign for your front door with your name on it, and you can hang it out front, and everybody will know who owns the place."
So he goes to work and paints this sign, and he handed it to the owner of the saloon. The fellow said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I can't hang this sign up."
He says, "Why not?"
He said, "Well, look at what you got here. Michael O'Reilly, chiropractor." He says, "Well,
What's the matter with that?"
He says, "Well, I'm no chiropractor."
He says, "You're not a chiropractor." He says, "Brother, in all my life, I never seen anyone who knows as many joints as you do."
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
So Mr. Brophy automatically has $25. You boys are out for the ride and the laughs, and Joe Laurie had his
I
hand
have
up
a short
first.
preface. Montgomery Epstein made a lot of money, and he went in for art. And he's buying all kinds of stuff. One day he comes home, and he says to his wife, he says, "Well, today I spent $50,000 on Rembrandts." She says, "What?" He says, $50,000 I spent on Rembrandts. She says, "Are you crazy to spend $50,000? He says, "Why? Rembrandts is worth a lot of money." She says, "Oh, Rembrandts. I thought you said remnants." I like those guys. The one I want to tell is a goof is watching a painter mixing paints and painting, and he looks at him and says, gee, you mix those paints, huh? He says, yeah. He says, tell me, what is that? He says, well, look, if you take yellow, you mix yellow and blue, you get green. He says, oh, that's nothing. If you mix... That's nothing. If you mix yellow and green, you get green. He says, yes, that's nothing. He says, if you mix milk and pickles, you get green, too.
1,000 on the laugh meter. The laugh meter registers 1,000 for that joke, Ward.
Well, Harry Hirschfield, you're up
I was
next.
ahead of myself.
Everybody is telling goof stories tonight, including myself. First, I want to throw in quick. A painter goes to the country, and he sees a kind of a goofy farmer standing there, and he says to the farmer, if I give you $5, will you let me paint you? And the farmer doesn't answer. So I said, will you? If I give you $10, will you let me paint you? He says, it ain't that. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get the paint off later. But I have a story that I'd like to tell of Mrs. Ivan Popnikov started out to get some culture. So she went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, got herself a catalog so she'd see the names of the paintings and everything, and she gave a hurried think through the thing and all that. When she came home that night, she said to Popnikov, her husband, says, Popnikov, you got to go with me to the museum tomorrow. We're going to see paintings, culture. I got a book. I'll explain everything to you, and you'll learn something. So he went with her, showed the different paintings, different names, the book type. Finally, he came to a picture of a guy, an awful-looking guy, needed a shave, his hair was unkempt, his clothes were torn, an awful-looking thing. He says, from who is this a picture? So she looked in the book, says, that's a Venetian beggar. He says, that's the poor people every time. He ain't got a cent, but money for pictures he's got.
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Senator Ford, how about you in this round?
Well, I know a fellow who painted a picture of a decayed apple, and everybody said it was rotten.
$1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Join Can You Top This, originated by Senator Ford, next week. Same time, same gang, other jokes, some new, some old. Until then, we remain yours for bigger and better laughs.
Edward Ford.
Harry Hirschfield.
Joe Laurie Jr. Hi, Mayor.
Ward Wilson.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer, saying so long, and take care of yourself until we meet again next time.
Can you top this? I know a guy who is so crooked that he can't eat a square meal.
Can you top that, Harry Hirschfield?
I'll try.
Can you, Senator Ford?
I didn't even hear it.
And you, Joe Laurie Jr.?
Neither did I.
Can you top this? Starring Senator Ford, Harry Hirschfield, and Joe Laurie Jr. And this is your host, Roger Bauer. And now, here is your master of ceremonies, Ward Wilson.
Can You Top This is unrehearsed and spontaneous, and our top rule is keep 'em laughing. Anyone can send in a joke, and if your joke is told by the well-known actor and storyteller Peter Donald, you get $10. Each of the three wits try to top it with another joke on the same subject. Each time they fail to top you, you get $5 more.
Can You Top This is made possible by our fine sponsor. Won't you please listen to this?
So are you ready, gentlemen, for the first round?
Ready.
Yeah.
All right, so is Private First Class Martin Kelly of Halloran Hospital, Staten Island, New York. And the subject of the first joke, as you might suspect, is sailor. Sailor this evening. And Peter, on behalf of Private First Class Kelly, I hope you have a lot of luck with this first story of the evening.
Well, it's about a sailor by the name of Herkimer Jerkimer, and his nickname, as a matter of fact, his nickname was Epsom. He was one of the old salts, you know. And he'd been in the Navy a long time. He served on every kind of ship, the LCTs and the LCMs and LC the Cow and all that stuff. Anyway, he finally ended up on an old tub, an old broken-down warship, a sort of
large barge with a swell smell, one of those terrible things. And then there was a new captain on the ship, and he insisted on everything being shipshape all the time, you know. And all the time the guy's trying to get a little rest, that loudspeaker on the wall would start blaring away like it does in those movies, you know. The thing and say, the smoking lamp is out, the smoking lamp is lit, the smoking lamp is out, the bosun's mate is lit, or whatever they say. So one day, with all this cleanliness going on, the chief petty officer said, "Hey, Jerkimer, come here." So Herky says, "Aye, aye." He says, "What do you want, Chief?" He said, "Jerkimer, shake a leg and polish the brass." He says, "Aye, aye." He says, "Then swab the deck." He says, "Aye, aye." He said, "Then scrub the paint." He says, "Aye, aye." He says, "And then clean the guns." He says, "Aye, aye." He said, "Then dust out the galley." He says, "Aye, aye, 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 gee." He says, "I ain't gonna have no time to myself." "All right, I will be a good sailor in the United States Navy. I will do it." So 6 hours later, he just got through, and along comes the CPO again. He says, "Well, Jerkimer," he says, "did you clean everything like I told you?" He said, "Aye, aye, I polished the brass, and I swabbed the deck, and I scrubbed the paint, and I cleaned the guns, and I dusted out the galley, and then I had 2 minutes left over to myself, so I grabbed a telescope and I swept the horizon."
Ward, the laugh meter registers 600 for that joke.
Gives our three wits plenty of leeway. So Private Kelly is a little bit in jeopardy here with all three hands up, I see. So let's call on the senator first.
Well, lots of sailors' gags. I don't say I'll tell a good one. You know, when a girl looks good in a bathing suit, a sailor looks good, too. Here is Mr. Wilson, I'm going to warn you, this is a very, very old joke I'm about to tell. A very old one.
I think
Many years ago, two sailors were shipwrecked. As a matter of fact, it's the oldest sailor joke I know. These two sailors were shipwrecked, and they were on a raft, and they were just floating around, drifting around, no land in sight. And finally, one of them became frightened, and he began to pray. He said, if I get out of this spot, I'll give up drinking, I'll give up gambling, I'll even give up going out with... And just then the other sailor said, "Wait a minute, don't swear too much, I think I see land."
650 is what the laugh meter registered, Ward.
Joke? I had to split hairs on that one. It does top Private Kelly 600, however, but he still has his $10. Both hands are up, and let's see what Joe Laurie has
Well,
to
there's
say.
a lot of sailor gags. This is just the curtain raiser. Get hot on this one.
Curtain raisers now.
About the sailor showing his kid brother around the ship. Never was on a ship before. And he shows him all over the ship. Finally gets to the deck. He says, "And you see that up there? That's a captain's bridge." He says, "What?" He says, "That's a captain's bridge." He says, "How does he get it in his mouth?"
That's good, too.
That's as old as yours. The one I want to tell, though, is pretty short. It's about an old maid that's going on one of those Bermuda trips. First time she's going on a Bermuda trip, and she's all around the boat and everything. Finally, she sees a sailor, and she says, "I beg your pardon." She says, "Where's the captain?" He says, "What?" He says, "Where's the captain?" He says, "The captain's forward, miss." She says, "What?" He says, "The captain's forward." She says, "Oh, I don't care. I'm on vacation."
That one made the top. 1,000 on the laugh meter.
Up the top with a solid bang, also top Private First Class Kelly 600.
I'm sorry I did that to our pal in Halloran.
I'm sorry you did, too, to tell you the truth. But let's see what Harry Hirschfield's going to do.
Yeah, Lord, you know what the sailor stories are, don't you? Soldier stories twisted around.
With a different uniform.
But I want to toss one in first. And that's the sailor that's sitting very sad. Oh, he's sad. Fellow said, "Anything wrong with the Navy?" "When did you go in the Navy?" He said, 4 years ago. He says, "When you getting out?" He says, "After the women and children." But the one I want is a sailor. A sailor's been on AWL. And he gets back to the ship, and he's got a few shots in him. He's been drinking a little bit. And the fellow lets him in and says, "Now, go right to your bunk. Don't let the Admiral see. I think he thinks you've been away now. And be careful what you say. Don't let him know you're stewed." He says, "All right, I know how to handle him. I know how to handle it. It's all right." And so he gets up there and walks around. The Admiral sees him. Said, "Where have you been? Where you going?" He says, I was late, says my uncle, awful sick. He's very, very sick. Well, he says, it's that bad that you had to stay away? Is it a matter of life and death? He says, yeah, I got a very rare disease. He got snoo in his blood. The animal says, what's snoo? He says, I don't know. What's snoo with you?
900 is the final score in the laugh meter, Ward.
Well, Harry, I notice you got that in an admirable setting anyway, or admirable setting.
Don't go away. We'll have another round of jokes in a few moments.
Back to the business of jokes, one submitted by W. Moran of Stamford, Connecticut. And this is on a subject which I understand is rather rare these days. I wouldn't know. Scotch. Scotch is the topic. So, Peter, suppose you pour yourself a little of this one.
This is about a Scotch fellow named Sandy McSpinach, and he was a real Scotsman, you know. He walked around in the kilt, that kind of sarong and half-mast they wear and all. So this particular evening, he came home to his wife, and he said, Lassie, he says, I've great, grand, and prodigious news for you. I've got enlightenment for you.
She says, what is it?
He says, well, he says, I went out today, he says, there's the guest of that grand fellow Scotsman, Harry McHersfield. Oh, he says, Harry, he says, he talks like a real Highlander, a Coney Highlander. He says he took me to a wonderful Scottish restaurant. He says, called McLindy's. Oh, it was grand. He says we had some real Scotch fish there called Loch Lomond. Oh, it was Then he says we went to a theater, and he says they had a magician there. Oh, he says he's wonderful, this magician. He says, I want you to see him. Lassie, I want you to go and see this magician and learn something.
She says, well, Sandy, what could I learn from a magician?
He says, well, now you'll see. I want you to go there, and I want you to watch him very carefully. Very, very carefully, you got to watch him. Especially the part where he takes one egg, puts it in a hat, and serves omelets to 50 people.
Peter, mentioning omelets.
And that was only 350 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Quite a struggle, and I don't blame you for throwing it away and kicking your feet at it. Stick around, you're making a chance to retrieve it. You can't tell. Let's see whose hands are up here. Harry Hirschfield had his hand up first.
Well, again, I want to toss one in, what Joe calls a curtain raiser. Sandy McPherson is invited over the phone. A guy says, why don't you come over to my house and play poker? He says, all right, but I can't stay late. He said, what do you call late? He says, 25 cents. But there's a gag that's going around now. It's about Sandy McPherson is going to get married. And he goes to a fellow who officiates and runs the marriages and everything, and he's trying to get the biggest bargain he can get. And he says, I want a bargain. I want a bargain. I want a fine wedding, but a bargain. It's got to be dignified, too, but bargain. Fellow says, well, I can give you a good wedding for $100. For $100, I wear a high hat with a cutaway coat. I've got 22 musicians. And he says, then I give a talk. I'll have them crying. He says, no, that's too much money. So, well, I can give you one for $25, but I don't wear a high hat. I wear a derby hat, and I wear a regular suit, and I only have 3 musicians. But I'll have them crying. I'll make them cry. He says, no, you got to do better than that. Well, he says, I'll give you one for $10. But for $10, he says, I come in with my BVDs. And he says, for music, I have a comb and a piece of tissue paper. But I got to warn you, from this I often get laughs.
The laugh meter says 550 on that one, Ward.
Which tops Mr. Moran's 350. We still have 2 more gentlemen to hear from here, and Joe Laurie had his
That
hand.
meter's a little scotchy, isn't it?
No, it was rather generous to 550, at least over 350.
Well, I have a short one just though. I could tell one about the Scotchman that brought back empty eggshells and wanted them relayed.
From this, you sometimes get laughed. You could tell that, Joe, but I wouldn't suggest
Very
it.
seldom. Now, the one I want to tell is about a fellow meets Sandy. Funny, all the Scotchmen's names are Sandy. He meets Sandy, says, what do you got there, Sandy? What's that package? He says, my brother and I, he says, chipped in, and we bought a bottle of whiskey. He says, that's the bottle of whiskey. We both chipped in. He says, oh, that's fine. He says, come on. He says, give me a drink out of your half. He says, I can't do it. He says, why can't you? He says, because my half is on the bottom.
The left meter says 300 this time, Ward.
Which is slightly under Mr. Moran's 350. He therefore has $15 right now, and
I got laughs.
we still have the senator to hear from.
I can't go too far wrong in this round. I can tell you that. Well, I know a Scotchman whose name wasn't Sandy. His name was Angus. And he wanted to give his girl some pearls for her birthday, so he bought her a dozen oysters and wished her luck.
Can't you?
Was that the curtain raiser, Senator?
That was what we used to call a preface. No, I know one about a Scotchman by the name of Sandy, too. Maybe that'll help it a little bit.
It didn't help me.
This Sandy went to have a tooth pulled, and the dentist gave him gas, and after he came to, he found out the dentist had pulled all of his teeth instead of just one. So he said, I thought you were going to pull only one tooth. And notice that Scotch in there? Wasn't that good dialect? So the dentist said, well, I gave you too much gas, and I didn't think you wanted me to waste it.
Ward, the left meter registers 600 for that joke.
Since only...
I was just thinking, Senator, you can have such bargains all your life.
Well, let's see if this was a bargain or not, Harry. This is a joke sent in by Mrs. Dorothy Apple of New York City, and it's on the subject of those fellows who never bring everything to the party, plumbers. Plumbers this time. Oh, Peter, this ought to be a pipe for you.
That's what I would call forcing you.
You know, I was just thinking back about the senator's joke. If it's about gas, I don't think the subject is Scotch. It's more likely to be bourbon. No, this is about Mike Flanagan. He dropped in to see his little friend, Patty Mulvaney, one day, and he walked in Patty's house, and Patty was nowhere around. But he heard a terrific hammering and clanking and banging going on down the cellar.
So he said, hello there, Patrick, me boy. Is that you down there?
Patches, I wouldn't be surprised. Come down. Come on down, come on down, come on down.
So Mike said, Pat, me boy. Oh, he says, what are you doing here? Are you fixing the pipes?
He says, what does it look like I'm doing? Embroidering me underwear or something? He says, of course I'm fixing the pipes. You can't get a plumber these days, so I had to do it myself. I'm changing all the pipes around, so I am.
He said, well, for goodness sakes, what are you changing all the pipes for?
He said, well, you see, it's this way. I got a little trouble. Oh, my, I've had trouble with them. And I got to change them around because I was getting cold water from the hot water spigot and hot water from the cold water spigot, you see.
He said, well, Paddy, he says, why don't you just change the faucet handles?
He says, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. You dumb spalpeen. Whoever heard of making cold water hot just by changing the faucet handle?
Up. 1,000 on the left meter, Ward.
Well, that made it a cinch for Mrs. Apple, Peter. Mrs. Apple automatically has $25. You boys are just out for the soap and the laughs. All three hands up, and let's call on Harry Hirschfield.
In one of the apartment houses, the plumber was sore to a skinny girl. Boy, was she skinny. She was so skinny, and one day he gets a call to come up to that apartment again. And he gets sore as the deuce, and he runs to the landlord. He says, I won't go up there anymore. So she says, you got to go up there. So he calls up the apartment. He said, listen, is it about your daughter again? He said, yes. He says, I want to tell you something. Tell her never to pull the plug out while she's still in the tub. I'm sick and tired of hunting for her.
It looks like another 1,000 on the left meter, Ward.
Not to hunt any further, Harry. Nice, Mrs. Apple's 1,000, but she still retains her $25. And the senator had his hand up second, I think.
Well, Pete's gag kind of reminded me of one. This is an absent-minded professor gag, too, works in here. Absent-minded professor went down into a cellar, and he saw a man with overalls fooling and fussing around with the pipes down there, and he said, are you a plumber? And the plumber said, yeah. He said, do you ever make mistakes? The plumber said, no. He said, well, then I guess everything is all right. I thought perhaps you got the pipes mixed up. Because the drawing room chandelier is spraying like a fountain and the bathroom tap is on fire.
The laugh meter registered 800 for that one, Ward.
You could try it all over again.
A plumber knocked
the other 200.
Come on up. Welcome to Comedy Encore. Bringing back the golden age of radio humor. A different show every week with different stars every week in their greatest performances. Come on up.
Hello?
Come on in. It's Comedy Encore. Tonight, Comedy Encore will bring back a few old jokes and an awful lot of old memories. Remember the weekly battle of wits that starred people like Peter Donald, Senator Ford, and Harry Hirschfield? Well, hang on to your hat, because here we go. Welcome to another laugh session with Can You Top This? And starring Harry Hirschfield. Howdy. Former Governor of New Jersey, Harold Hoffman. Hiya. Senator Ford. Greetings. Now, here is your master of ceremonies for Can You Top This, Ward Wilson.
Thank you, Jack Costello. Can You Top This is unrehearsed and spontaneous, and our top rule is keep 'em laughing. Everybody's invited to send in a joke, and if your story is told by our master storyteller, Peter Donald, you start with $25. Each time a wit ties or tops you, you lose $5. In addition, if you top all of our wits, you'll receive a recording of Peter Donald telling your story on the air. Laughs are registered on the Can You Top This laugh meter in full view of our studio audience, and in all cases, the decision of our judges is final. Well, fellas, it's a brave brech moon lech rech rech, I think. So, everybody on this panel ready and willing to go to work?
Oh, yeah,
ready?
sure.
All right? Okay. Here's the first joke, and this one's submitted by Edward Murphy. Edward Murphy of Brooklyn, New York. And the subject is suggestion. Suggestion. Being married, I imagine you've heard something along this line, and my suggestion to you, Pete, get going.
Yeah, all right. This is about a little Irish friend of mine by the name of Ajax Cassidy. And one day, he walks into a tavern, he says, "Oh, my," he said, "I'm thirsty. Oh, my, I'm so dry. Oh, dear. Oh, I've never been so thirsty in my life." He says, "You know, they say a camel can go 30 days without water. Well, so can I. I'll have a beer, bartender." So the fella brings over the beer, and he drinks it, and he says, "Yeah, I'll have another one, too." Bartender pours another one. He wallops that down. He says, "Hey, one more, if you don't mind." Bartender brings that. He has about 5 more beers, and he says, "Bartender," he says, "I'd like a word with your proprietor." Fella said, "Oh, yes, sir. That's him standing right over there by the cash register." He goes over and he says, "Excuse me, young man." He says, "This is something of a rather personal nature." But he says, "Would you mind telling me how many kegs of beer you sell here in a week?" Fellow says, "Yeah, we sell 35 kegs of beer in a week." He says, 35 kegs in a week. Imagine that, 35 kegs of beer. He says, "You know me, boy, I have a suggestion whereby you could sell 75 kegs a week." Fellow said, "Sell 75 kegs of beer instead of 35? How?" He says, "How? When you serve the customers, have the bartender fill up the glasses once in a while."
Not much of a head on that one, Pete. 500 was the amount of the Can You Top This laugh meter. So you allow our 3 wits a little latitude on this round, although Mr. Murphy does start with 25. How many hands up to start the operations here? Senator? Now Harold? Now Harry? Well, let's start with the senator this time.
Ole Svengard went to call on his girlfriend, and they sat on the sofa there holding hands for an hour in complete silence. So finally, Ole said, "Helga, will you marry me?" And Helga said, "Yes, Ole, I will." Then another hour of complete silence. So finally she said, "Ole, why don't you say something?" And Ole said, "I think I said too much already."
Well, you set it up to 850 on the laugh meter. That tops Mr. Murphy's 500, so he's reduced financially to $20.
And we move over to Harry Hirschfield now.
I'd like to tell you this quick that President Roosevelt's favorite story, this is on the level, was the one about the hillbilly that was calling on a girl for a year. And finally the father of the girl came to this hillbilly, says, "You've been calling on my daughter now for a year. Are your intentions honorable or dishonorable?" He says, "You mean I got a choice?" But there's an old man dying, and he's nobody can help him. No doctor can help him. Nobody. So finally the son's figured out to get a hypnotist. So they bring in the hypnotist, and the old man is laying there. He don't know what it's all about. And the hypnotist goes to work on him. Moves his hands and bono and all those things. Casalamu, everything. He's giving it out like this. And slowly the old man's eyelids close. 15 minutes later, the old man's eye opens on the left. He looks at his son. He says, "Is that crazy dope gone away yet?"
Well, crazy dope or no, Harry was 800 that time on the Can You Top This last meter. Also tops Mr. Murphy's 500, reducing him cash-wise to $15. And let's get in now with Harold Hoffman.
My story is about another one of Peter Donald's friends, Mrs. Sadie Popofnik. And she goes into the police station, the nearest precinct station, and they refer to the Missing Persons Bureau because she wants to report that her husband has been missing for 2 days. So the sergeant gets out a pad and he said, "Well, now, Mrs. Popofnik, I would suggest that you give us first a description of your husband." She says, a tall man, he's about 6 feet, and he's got beautiful blue eyes, and he's got black wavy hair, and there's a patrolman standing near her. He said, "Now, just a minute, lady, just a minute." He says, "I know your husband. Your husband is a little short, bull-headed, bow-legged shrimp." She says, "Yeah, but who wants him back?"
You got back all right, Harold. 1,000 the amount that time on the Can You Top This laugh meter. So Mr. Murphy's reduced another $5, bringing him down to a total of $10 on the evening submission of a joke on suggestion. We carry on with a joke from Florence, Colorado, submitted by Joan Moschetti. And the subject of her joke is information, gentlemen. Information. This happened over in England. They have those great inns over there, those wonderful old saloons, and they have a lot of atmosphere and those terrific names, the Swan and Crown and the Bull and Bear and the Abbott and Costello and whatever, all these wonderful old inns. And there were two locals, two little cockneys leaning up against the corner of the public house bar. One fellow puts down his mug of ale.
He says, "I say, Abbott." He says, "Did you hear about what's his name?"
I said, "Oh, yeah, him. Yeah, I heard about him. What about him?"
Well, he said, "I don't know if you heard what I heard about what's his name, but what I heard, he returned from wherever he was, and he's gone to that new thingamajig over at How you call it. And he married what's his name's sister. Did you hear about that?"
Well, I says, "Well, yes, as a matter of fact, it's what I did hear in a general way, but this is the first time I heard all the details."
There was 1,000 on the laugh meter, Pete. 1,000. So here's Mrs. Clayton's position. She has registered 1,000 on the laugh meter and would like to register $25 in the cash book. Any hands? Harry Hirschfield has his hand up first.
First, I heard one I think is up to the minute. Guy gets one of those tax blanks to send in and sign it regarding his estimated tax. So he says to his wife, "I'm going to send it back unsigned." Says, "Can you do that?" He says, "I'll do it. If I have to guess how much I'm going to make, to let him guess who sent it back." There's a bunch of women at a club. And all afternoon they play cards and they drink and they tell stories they shouldn't tell and all that kind of stuff. And there's one little dame who always comes in kind of kibitzes. But she doesn't join them. But she's always a calamity Jane, telling of everything that's going to happen. And finally they said, "Listen, we got to get rid of this woman. The next time she comes up, we've got to insult her. Let's all get up and rush out of the room. Leave her alone." So they wait for her. And finally she comes in this next day. She said, "I hear the United States government is going to take all the lady tramps that smoke and drink, all these lady bums. And they're going to put them on a ship and send them to Patagonia. With all they got to run out, she says, what's your rush? The boat don't leave till Saturday.
Your boat left as of now, Harry. You got 1,000 on the last video. You tied Mrs. Clayton's 1,000, and so we chop away as is customary in those instances, $5, giving her now $20. And Fred Hillebrand, is that your hand up there?
Yes, it is.
Go right ahead, my boy.
Here's one that digs me. It sends me solid. It's cool. It's really yummy. Years ago in Pleasure Bound, that was a show played here for a year at the Majestic Theater. Jack Pearl starred, Phil Baker, and the whole big cast. Well, Jack told this story in the show, and I'd like to tell it. Of course, I have a Dutch accent. This fellow was in a mental institution, and he's peeking through the fence there when a farmer drives by with a wagon, and the fellow inside says, What do you got there, farmer? And the fellow said, fertilizer. He says, yeah? He says, where are you going with it? He says, down the road to the farm here. He says, what are you going to do with it? He says, I'm going to put it on our strawberries. So the inmate, he started to laugh. He says, look, you better come in here with us. We put sugar and cream on ours.
Well, you butted up the laugh meter, too.
What's up there? That's all I want to know.
Yes, sir. You tied Mrs. Clayton 1,000. We chop away $5. She now has $15. On the other hand, Senator Ford, your hand should be up. You want to go in?
Well, I guess there's nobody left but me. Well, this is a story about a woman, when you can't beat women. If they want to get even with you, it's just too bad. Well, this woman went into a post office, and she went up to a window, and she said to a grouchy-looking clerk, I want a 3-cent stamp. He said, look, lady, can't you read? Right up above this window, it says information. I don't sell stamps. You get the stamps down the hall. So she gave him a dirty look, and, of course, she didn't give it to him. He had it before she arrived. But anyway, she walked down the hall and bought herself a 3-cent stamp, and she came back to the same window. She said, is this the information window? Said, can't you read the sign up there? All right, then tell me this. If I mail this letter now, will it be in New York tomorrow? He said, yes, it will. She said, that's funny. It's addressed to Indianapolis.
And that's also funny, Senator. Well, inasmuch as all three of you which tied Mrs. Clayton's 1,000, we send her with our very best wishes $10.
Let's get on to another subject here. This one submitted by David Dressler of New York City, and this is on the subject of taxi. Taxi. So the flag is up, Peter, and it's in your direction.
Well, it's about my Brooklyn friend, this girl Sadie DeKalb, and apparently this particular day she's in an awful hurry to catch a train or something. So she rushes over to this cab and
She says, Driver, she says, I want you to get me to Grand Central Station right away. Hurry up. I'm in such a rush, I've got to catch the 20th century liniment, and I'm very, very rushing.
So the fellow says, okay, lady, and he throws the flag, and off he goes, and he's trying to get her there, and he's weaving in and out of traffic, and he starts to cheat on a few red lights. And he's making a couple of illegal turns, and all of a sudden, along comes the policeman in the prowl car, pulls him over.
This great big policeman gets out. He says, listen, Buster, he says, do you by any chance know we got traffic regulations in this city? Now I'm going to throw the book at you. Do you know?
And she in the back seat, she says, listen, officer.
He says, quiet, lady. Now, just a minute. This man was endangering your life. And I'm going to tell him.
And he starts laying out the taxi driver. He's bawling him out.
And she says, officer, please.
He says, now, lady, don't interfere with the law. This man nearly... Now I'm going to tell him, and he goes on again for about 5 minutes, bawling out the cab driver.
She says, officer, for goodness sake.
He says, wait a minute, madam. He says, what's the matter with you? I'm bawling this man out because he was endangering your life. I'm protecting you. You don't want to get killed in a taxi accident, do you?
She says, no, but I don't want to die broke either. Turn off the meter.
No question on that one, Petey, is zooming 1,000. So we start Mr. Dressler off with $25 and see what our wits can do with that one. All right, Harry, you're first.
Of course, there are a million taxi ones, but I want to throw this in first. I heard it just the other day. One taxi driver said to another, how do you keep your car so nice and shiny? He said, I keep pushing it through the crowds.
But I have a favorite story. There's a husband who's a kind of a wolf. And every night he would go to a certain cafe, flirt with the gals in there. Then he would take the same taxi cab that would always be in front of this cafe to escort her home. So in the cab, he'd make love to this girl and escort her home. Went for weeks this way. Then it came his wife's birthday, and of all places, she wanted to go to this special cafe, and he couldn't get out of it. So they go to the cafe, he's trusting to luck. He goes into the cafe, and they have some drinks, the wife and he, and she's very gay and everything. Then as they come out to go home, that cab of all cabs is in front, and she wants that cab, and now he can't get away from him because the cab man knows him. So he goes into the cab with his wife, and they're riding, and the wife is getting into an argument with him all of a sudden. She finally starts to punch him in. The cab man turns around and says, "Listen, buddy, you can't win every time. Let's go back and get another dame."
Harry, I'm going to credit you with 900. You got one of those flickaroos, too, but it looked a little suspicious to me, so we give you 900. Bert, we'll call you in second.
Well, Ward, this is the story of a synthetic taxi. You know those cabs they drive through Central Park? This happens to be a true story. Well, they all park along Central Park South, and I have a speaking acquaintance with all of them. Funny characters, you know, the high hat nearly always with the cigar butt. Walking the dog last summer, and an old lady with corrective glasses on, very thick ones, is examining the wheels and then the upholstery, and the cabbie is up there with the cigar looking at her. And presently she looked up and says, "Pardon me, sir, are you the cabbie?" He said, "No, lady, I'm the horse. We're often mistaken for each other."
800 the amount, Mr. Lytell. So, Senator, you got a good joke that you can tell in about a half a minute?
Yeah.
All right.
There's a little old lady who lives up in my hometown, and she'd never been to New York before, and she got off the train at the Pennsylvania station, got herself a cab, and this driver starts off on two wheels. He's making cushion shots off the parked cars, runs through red lights, and finally she says, "Look here, young man, you drive a little slower. This is the first time I ever rode in a taxi." He said, "You got nothing on me, lady. This is the first time I ever drove one."
Senator, you looked just in time. What did you see?
I was waiting for that lady who...
Well, it was 400 on the meter, and none of you wits tied or topped Mr. Dressler, so he gets a prize of $25 plus a recording of Pete telling his story on the air.
Mrs. Charles F. Gossel of Maribel, Wisconsin, gives you your next test, gentlemen.
And the subject is trickery. Trickery. So, Pete, prove to us that there's no trickery to get that 1,000, would it?
Okay, Wardy. This is about a woman who had a vacation, and she went down to Rio de Janeiro. Well, she's one of these souvenir hunters, and she was buzzing around buying things and shopping for the souvenirs. And finally, when she got ready to come back, she found that she hadn't got enough money left to pay for the duty, you know, because down there in Rio, the unit of monetary exchange is the peso. And that means you pay so much for this, you can't afford that. So she decides the only thing she can do is sneak some of these souvenirs off the boat. Well, she comes down off the ship over at the pier, and the customs inspector comes over. He says, "All right, lady, you got anything to declare?" She says, "Oh, no, nothing at all, nothing." He said, "Well, I don't want to make any personal remarks, madam, but," he says, "there happens to be a tail hanging down under your coat." He says, "You should either wear longer coats or smuggle shorter minks. I don't know which." "Oh," she says, "that's nothing." She says, "That's an old second-hand fur." He said, "Second-hand? It looks new to me." She says, "Oh, no, it isn't new." She says, "After all, the mink wore it for 3 or 4 seasons." He says, "Now, wait a minute, sister. Don't get fresh with the United States government." He says, "Just because you're being wise, I think I'll look through this trunk." "Oh," she says, "no, there's nothing in there but wearing apparel. Nothing but wearing apparel." He says, "Wait a minute." And he opens the trunk. Right there in the front, there's 2 beautiful bottles of fine brandy, worth about $65 a bottle. He says, "Huh? Madam, you are going to tell me, a representative of the United States government, that these bottles of old brandy are wearing apparel?" She says, "Why, certainly. Those are my husband's nightcaps." Well,
good night taps to our three wits if they try to top that one because it was a 1,000. Can you top this laugh meter, Pete? You got there. Now let's see what our three wits can do as Mr. Kettner starts out with $25 and we start out tonight with Senator Ford.
Well, talking about trickery, excuse me, the other night at the Lambs, we had a magician's night. Stearns, Blackstone, all the big magicians were there, which recalls the magician who years ago worked with a parrot. And every time he'd make something disappear, the parrot would say, fake, phony. And, of course, that would get laughs. So during World War II, he joined a USO unit to entertain the servicemen. And halfway across the Pacific, the ship hit a floating mine and blew up. Well, the magician happened to get a hold of some wreckage, and he held on there. And for 2 days, he held on to this spar that was floating around, and the parrot was on his shoulder. For 2 days, nothing was said. Finally, the parrot cocked his head and looked at him. He said, look, Mac, I've been working with you a long time. He said, I know all of your tricks, but this one's got me stumped. What did you do with the ship?
By the same token, what did you do with the meter? But get 1,000 that time, Senator. So you tie Mr. Kettner, but you don't supersede him, of course. And I think Harold Hoffman had his hand up second.
About trickery, it seems that Clancy met O'Brien, and O'Brien was looking very downhearted and discouraged. And Clancy said, what's the matter with you, Mike? He said, what's the matter? He says, I'm having trouble at home, having trouble with me wife. He says, you know, I like to go out nights and have a few beers with the boys. And he said, every time I come home, he says, Mary Ellen just raises the devil with me. Once or twice she bait me up. And he says, I don't know what to do. I'm leading a dog's life. He says, well, what you got to do is resort to a little trickery. He said, no, I'll tell you what I do. I like to go out, too, and drink and have some fun with the boys. But he said, I'll tell you what I do. He says, I fool Maggie. He says, when I come home, he says, when I come in the house, no matter what time of night it is, down at the foot of the stairs, he says, I take off my shoes, I hold them in my hand, I take off all my clothes, and I hang them over my arm. I go upstairs, and I jump quick in bed, and if it should disturb Margaret a little bit, and she wakes up, she thinks I've been there for a long while, do you see? He says, you got to use a little trickery like that if you want to get along with your wife. He said, it's a good idea. I'll try it. So about a week later, Clancy again met O'Brien. Still is looking very dejected. He said, what's the matter? He said, a fine friend you are of mine. Well, he said, did you try the trick I took? He says, I tried it, yeah. He said, you know, I went way downtown in McSorley's. I had a few ales. He said, then after that, he says, I went over to O'Hara's saloon. He said, after McSorley's had closed, and he said, I had a few shots with the boys. And he said, I remembered what you told me. He said, so when I started for home uptown, he said, I did just what you told me. At the foot of the stairs, I stopped. He said, I took off all my clothes, hung them over my arms. I took off my shoes, held them in my hand. He says, and I sneaked very quietly up to the top of the stairs. And he says, a gust of the wind hit me. And what do you think? He said, I was coming out of the 42nd Street subway station.
Almost made that 1,000, Harold. 950 was the amount that time. And we still have to hear from Harry Hirschfield in this round.
Well, Fred Stone, formerly of Montgomery and Stone, probably one of the most famous beloved actors in the world. And I hope he's listening in because he gave me this story. Finnegan and Murphy go out on a hunting trip for big game. So they get out into hunting for this big game, and as soon as they got out there, a lion started towards them. They got so frightened they dropped all their ammunition and started to run. And Finnegan says to Murphy, he says, we got to fool him. I'll run up on a tree and you go into a cave. We got to upset him. So one ran up a tree and the other ran in the cave. But the lion started for the guy in the cave, and he got to the entrance to the cave, and the lion stopped. Lion looked a little while, turned around, and walked away. As soon as he started to walk away, Murphy came out of the cave. The lion saw him, turned around, and started for him again. Again he ran in the cave. As soon as the lion got enough of it, he walked away. As soon as he got away again, Out came Murphy again. The lion started again for him. Came to the entrance. Turned around, walked again, and again Murphy came out. And finally Finnegan said, "The darn fool, why don't you let him get away a while before coming out?" He says, "I gotta come out. There's a tiger inside."
Very solid 1,000 that time, Harry, and can you top this laugh meter? So the net result is Mr. Kettner will be the recipient of $15 from the panel. And that brings to a close tonight's session of Can You Top This?
Well, we certainly hope you enjoyed hearing Can You Top This once again. And we also hope you'll join us again next Sunday evening for...
And now we invite you to meet Corliss Archer, America's Teenage Sweetheart, starring Janet Waldo.
Thinks nothing of walking 10 miles before breakfast. I don't think much of it myself.
Can you top that, Harry Hirschfield?
I'll try.
Can you, Senator Ford?
How do I know? I didn't even hear it.
And you, Joe Laurie Jr.?
Me neither.
These three jokies in this derby of horse laughs bring you another session of Can You Top This? And now for the man who'll tell a story of how to win cash and glory. Ward Wilson.
Thank you, Charlie Stark. Can You Top This is unrehearsed and spontaneous, and our top rule is keep 'em laughing. Anyone can send in a joke, and if your joke is told by the well-known actor and storyteller Peter Donald, you get $10. Each of the three wits try to top it with another joke on the same subject. Each time they fail to top you, you get $5 more.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer. Can You Top This is made possible by our fine sponsor. Won't you please listen to this?
You ready, fellas, for the first round?
Ready.
I guess so.
All right. Senator is a little dubious tonight. The first joke is sent in by Seymour Barron of New York City, and this is on the subject of treatment. Treatment. Sounds as though it might give you quite a bit of leeway on that subject, so we'll be a little tolerant. And, Peter, suppose you start the ball rolling.
Well, Dr. Cronkite was in his office one day, and he was working on a very, very important case. Haig, as a matter of fact. When all of a sudden the door opened, and in walked a patient. So the doctor put on his glasses. He said, good afternoon, my young friend. He says, sit down. Tell me what could I done for you? So the patient says, are you the doctor? He says, well, certainly. You are speaking to Dr. S. Besser v. Cronkite. That's my name. Dr. Cronkite, M.D., money down. He says, what seems to be your trouble there? He says, well, Doc, I want you to examine the back of my neck. He says, the back of your neck? Well, please turn around a little bit so I can see here. Goodness sakes, that's serious, you know. Your neck has got a severe discoloration. It's got a lacer. It's got... Why don't you wash it once in a while? It's terrible. Honest, he says... you got all big cuts and bumps and bruises here. He says, how did you get this? What happened? You got all these cuts and bruises. He says, well, Doc, that's from playing the violin in an orchestra. He says, from playing the violin? He says, how could playing the violin in an orchestra give you such bumps on the back of the neck? He says, because I sit right in front of the slide trombone player.
The laugh meter registered 450 on that one, Ward.
I don't blame you for brushing that off like kicking at it. Gives our three wits plenty of room to get in here over or under Mr. Barron's 450. Let's see how many hands we have. Joe Laurie had his hand up first this time.
Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I got it. He reminded me of one of that Irving Hoffman, the caricaturist and critic, told me. Fits in here for treatment. It's about this goof that goes to the doctor. He says, hey, Doc, I'm feeling terrible. He said, what's the matter with you? He says, I got a cat inside of me. It's clawing me and everything. He says, cat inside of you? So he examines him and he finds out it's an appendix. He says, well, I'll cure you. So he puts him under ether, and as he took his appendix out, he says, I'll cure him with the cat, too. So he grabs a hold of the office cat, little black cat. And when the guy comes out of the ether, he says, see? I cured you. There's the cat. He says, oh, no, you made a mistake. That ain't the cat. It's a gray cat that's doing it.
Well, looks like only 400 on the laugh meter now, Ward.
Doesn't top Mr. Barron's $4.50. So he's now up to $15, and Harry Hirschfield had his hand up.
Well, I got a couple in mind on treatment. I'm going to take the advantage of the leeway of a subject like that. You know, everybody that's coming for Europe, this is a little preface, coming from Europe, they naturally all come into New York Harbor, and they're all talking of America. And there's a sailor listening to the whole thing there. He's been to New York and back 1,000 times. And as they were coming into New York Harbor, one said, oh, there's the Statue of Liberty. Oh, America, they treat you right. Statue of Liberty stands for wealth. That's what it means. We'll have everything here. So this guy says, don't kid yourself. The Statue of Liberty, everybody comes in New York Harbor, says that the Statue of Liberty is going to do something for it. In fact, the Statue of Liberty is very, very poor. He says, what do you mean the Statue of Liberty is poor? See, she has only a jersey to her back. The gag I want to tell. Mrs. Zipkin was sick. So she went to a friend of hers and she says, I got to have a doctor. Do you know a good doctor? Somebody that you can depend on? She says, go to Dr. Popnikov. There is the doctor. Dr. Popnikov, if I recommend him, you can take him. So this woman went home, Mrs. Zipkin, but she wasn't exactly convinced. So she calls her up again and she said, are you sure that Dr. Popnikov is a good doctor? Says, a good doctor? Would I be going to him every day for 20 years if he wasn't a good doctor?
Well, that sort of broke the ice, Harry.
1,000 on the laugh meter.
Mr. Barron still holds his $15, and Senator Ford we haven't heard from in this round.
Well, there are a number of gags on treatment that would fit the subject of treatment anyway. There's one of the two fellas talking. One says, how's the world treating you? The other fellow says, very seldom. Then there's the time that Pete reminded me of this with the joke he told. Dopey Dildock went to the doctor to find out what was the matter with him, and the doctor said, do you suffer from rheumatism? And Dopey said, sure, what else can you do with it? That's another kind of treatment. Then there's, Then there's a time Mother said to her son, she said, you know, you're treating your aunt very much better than you used to. I saw you open the barn door for her today. And the kid said, that's nothing. I open the barn door for the cows every day, don't I?
Well, Senator, we have a choice now of 100, 300, and
No, there's no choice. Which one was the highest?
Well, that isn't my choice. I like the middle one better, and that got 300, which doesn't top Mr. Barron's.
You're beginning to pick out what you like now, huh?
Well, somebody
have trouble with you again tonight.
We'll be right back with our next round of jokes after these few commercial words.
Back to the business of jokes once again. This one sent in by Kay Henderson of Larchmont, New York, and it's on the subject of storms. Storms.
We just had one a little while ago.
We'll probably have another one before we get off the air. Peter, suppose you rain down on this one.
Well, Sadie DeKalb, the green paint glamour girl, she went and got herself a job as a cook in a very swanky Westchester house. And she wasn't very good at this cooking. She wasn't very bright either. The first evening she was there, the mistress, Mrs. Geltbelt there, she says, Sadie, my dear, come here. What on earth did you stuff this chicken with?
She says, well, gee whiz, I didn't have to stuff it. It wasn't empty, you know.
So anyway, she wasn't a very bright kid. So this particular night, they had a terrific thunderstorm, and the lightning is flashing and the thunder is booming away, and all of a sudden, short circuit, all the lights in the house go out. So in a couple of minutes, Sadie comes running into Mrs. Geltbelt from the kitchen.
She says, well, this is very perturbing, Mrs. Geltbelt. I don't like this at all. I'm very, very upset. I really am.
Well, Sadie, what do you mean? What's the matter?
She says, well, gee, how can I cook dinner with all the lights out like this? And I'm trying to make crepe Suzettes and everything nice tonight. And the lights is out. I can't see what I'm doing. Why don't you pay his bills once in a while?
So the mistress said, she said, please, Sadie, you don't understand. She said, the lights are out because of the storm.
She says, oh, yeah? Well, I noticed they're only out in this house. All the automobiles out on the street are still lit.
600, 800, 1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Miss Henderson automatically has $25. You boys are just out for the laughs and the soap, and I notice Harry Hirschfield has his hand up first.
Again, I want to toss one in first. It's kind of a little newy, I think. And a tremendous sleet storm, and oh, it's sleeting, it's slush, and it's cold, and it's blizzardy. A panhandler rings the doorbell of a place, and the door opens, and the sleet and everything hits the guy in the face, says, what do you want? Panhandler says, I would like something to eat. Believe me, I've seen better days. The guy says, so have I, but did you come here to discuss the weather or to come to eat here? But that is not the gag. But there's a fella came and borrowed some stuff from Finnegan. He came on a call and he borrowed a safety razor and he borrowed a fountain pen and he borrowed a book and he borrowed some hairbrushes and he promised to bring them back and he didn't bring them back. So finally Finnegan got mad and he took him to court. And the judge for the guy says, now what did you claim he took from you? What did he borrow and didn't pay back? Well, he says he came and he took hairbrushes. And he says he took a fountain pen, he borrowed that, and he borrowed a book, and he borrowed a safety razor, and he never brought him back. He says, are you sure of that? Positive? He says, sure as I can be. Well, since you're so sure, and you know the date so sure, and the time, what was the weather that night? He says, I'm glad you remind me. He's got my umbrella also.
Much better than the preface, Harry.
900 is the final score in the laugh meter, Ward.
However, it doesn't top Miss Henderson's 1,000. And now we have the other two hands up. I think the senator was second in line.
Well, a visitor to a small town said to a farmer, is your village lighted by electricity? He said, only when it lightnings. A teacher said to a little Sonny Lightner, she said, when rain falls, does it rise again? He said, yes, in due time. Oh, I have a lot of storm gags.
Suppose we hear a couple, Senator.
You want him to have a brainstorm?
Everybody picks on me. I don't know why. Anyway, it was midnight, and it was raining cats and dogs. There were poodles all over. And maybe I ought to leave it right there. Huh? And this drunk saw it cover in a doorway, and it happened to be a sporting goods store. And he looked up, and right over the doorway in the form of a sign was a fish with a hook in its mouth and a line attached. So he looked for a while, and he ran over and rang the doorbell to the tenant who lived upstairs. The fellow stuck his head out of the window and said, what do you want? He said, come on down, you got a bite, make it snappy.
Okay, Senator. Donald decided to go over and retrieve the one he threw away after that. Well, in order of their appearance, those three jokes got 0, 300, and 550 cents.
Oh, now, wait a minute. It couldn't be 0. 3 people laughed. I heard them.
No, as a matter of fact, I think it backed up a little bit, but I was going to keep it easy.
Oh, you're fine tonight.
Well, so far, nobody's topped Miss Henderson's 1,000, and Joe Laurie's the only one with a check.
What can
I thought the round was over.
I've got a short preface. A fella says, tells his friend, he says, I was giving a party. He says, I made up my invitations, and a terrific windstorm come up. So instead of mailing the invitations, he says, I just threw them in the air. He says, what happened? He says, I got a much better class of people at the party that way. What I want to tell is a terrific snowstorm up in Maine. Oh, a terrific snowstorm. And there's a salesman going up the road there, and his car can hardly move, and he sees a farmer on snowshoes with a big, long pole. And he sticks the pole down in the snow. And he takes it up. Sticks it down in the snow. Walks a little bit further. Puts it up. And the salesman says, how deep is it? He says, I don't know. He says, then what are you sticking the pole away in the snow for like that? He says, I'm looking for my barn.
Joe, that wavered between 900 and 950, but it doesn't top Henderson's 1,000.
Say, Ward, are you the referee of this thing?
I think I'm supposed to be. I often
Well, tell my manager I took an awful beating in that round, will you?
Nobody laid a glove on you. Don't worry about a thing.
So far, he's counted over 10.
Yeah, that's perfectly all right. Here's our next...
Ward,
Yes.
maybe you better slip me one of those joke books. I could find something to do tonight.
I understand there's plenty of material in there, Senator. Maybe we should have opened one tonight. I don't know. Let's see what happens on the next round anyway. This is from Mrs. D. Cantor. I don't think she's related to Eddie, of New Bedford, Massachusetts. And on the subject, I hope none of you three come in too close contact with police. Police this time. So, Peter, act like a copper with this one, will you?
Well, little Paddy Mulvaney was on the police force, and he used to be out on active duty. He was out on the beat, but he had to retire from that kind of rough stuff. It got a little too tough for him. He used to ride in the sidecar of a motorcycle, and one day the floor of the thing fell out, and he had to run alongside for 4 miles. So they put him on the desk work, and he was sort of the desk sergeant there. Well, this one day he's sitting there in all his glory, and a woman ran in, and she said, "Oh, pardon me, sir, but are you a policeman?"
He says, "Now, what do I look like? Arturo Toscanini or somebody?" Of course I'm a policeman. Now, what is your dilemma? And we'll try to help you.
She said, I lost a diamond ring, or else it was stolen, and I wanted it investigated right away.
He says, "All right, now, you came to the right party. Now, don't worry, you go home, and we'll get some of our sleuths to investigate for you, and we'll find it for you."
So she goes home, and she takes off her coat to hang it up. And there, right on the dresser, is the diamond ring. She just dropped it there. So she immediately calls the police station, and he's on the other end. He says,
"Mulvaney, the bloodhound speaking. What's your problem?"
She says, "Mr. Mulvaney, this is Mrs. Jones. You know, I reported that the loss of a diamond ring."
He says, "Yes, I remember that very well."
Well, she says, I just wanted to tell you, don't bother sending over a detective. I found the ring."
He says, "You found it? You say you found it?" He says, "For the love of Mike, you can't do that. We just arrested the thief."
The laugh meter registered 800 for that one, Ward.
Our boys have a little leeway on this particular round of Mrs. Cantor, so let's see whose hands we have. Harry Hirschfield had his hand
Well,
up
there's a crazy story going around now, this screwball story. It could fit this. There's a nudist walking down the street. And as he's sauntering around the street, this nudist called a cop. A cop grabs a hold of it and says, "Oh, one of those kind of guys. I'm going to take you right to the station house." But he says, "Wait a minute, I put my coat over you." Guy says, "No, I want to go just like I am to the station house." He says, "The way you are to the station house?" He says, "Yes." He says, "I don't want people to think I was arrested for being a pickpocket."
700 is the score on the laugh meter this time, Ward.
Which is just 100 under Mrs. Cantor's 800, so she now has $15. And I think the Senator had his hand up a second.
Yeah, well, now listen, I'm going to tell one, and if it doesn't go, blame it on Marshall P. Wilder, because he told it years ago. Maybe he told it better than I'll tell it, but that doesn't make any difference. There was a fire in a rubber factory, and there was an employee trapped on the 7th floor. There was no way of his getting down. He couldn't jump. The pavement was 70 feet below, and there were no fire nets in those days. So he got an idea. So he began wrapping rubber around himself to break his fall when he jumped. But he made the mistake of putting too much rubber on himself. When he jumped, he began to bounce. And he bounced and he bounced. He bounced for 5 days when a policeman had to shoot him to keep him from starving to death.
Well, thanks to Mr. Wilder, Senator, that one got 850, just 50 over Mrs. Cantor's 800. So
maybe I should think of more people who told jokes.
Go back for a few more. Let's see, Joe, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, there's a lot of policemen, gang. I'll throw one in. This doesn't count. It's about the 2 kids bragging. One kid says, "You know, my brother's a robber." He says, "Your brother's a robber?" He says, "Yes, and he's going to rob your house." He says, "Yeah, going to rob our house? We'll have the house full of cops." He says, "Oh, he won't take them because we got too many cops now around our house. We don't know what to do." What I want to tell is a sort of annoying to me. There's a car racing, and a cop goes after him, and he stops him. "Pull over." He says, "How fast were you going?" He says, "Well, officer, I got to tell you the truth. 90 miles an hour. I'll tell you the truth. We went 90. He says, "You went 90. He says, you know, the law allows you 30 miles an hour. He says, that's right, that's right, boss. You're the boss. He says, you went 90, and the law allows you 30. Let me see, 30 into 90. 3 times. Here's 3 tickets. So there was another cop that come around. And he says, now let me... He says, you give me 3 tickets. He says, let me see your driver's license. Your license. He says, drivers or owners? He says, what's the difference? I can't read them anyway. Then another cop shot around. Let me read the book with you tonight, Senator.
That wasn't one of Mr. Wilder's old monologues, was it, Joe?
Ward, have I got time to tell
I'm not going to blame Wilder on this either.
For free? Can I have got time for free to tell the first policeman story I ever heard?
We'll have to make it quickly, Harry.
There's a policeman standing on a corner, and there's a burglar, a bandit, throws a brick through a jewelry window, takes all the jewelry out of the window and everything, and the cop is watching him. And finally, this bandit says to the policeman, tell that to your police captain. He said, not me. I'm no gossip.
Well, Joe, taking into account your scores on that round, I like the 50 in the middle. That was a cute little thing.
More fun, more jokes coming up in a minute after this word from our sponsor.
All right, boys, now for another round of jokes. This one's sent in by Mrs. Bess Finkel of Patterson, New Jersey, on the subject of gloom. Gloom. So, Pete, here's one.
Don't even have to tell a joke. Just look at the senator's face.
Say disaster, just gloom. So, Peter, here's your chance to be a gloom dodger at last.
Oh, that's the plug. This is about my old friend, Mr. Abercrombie Fafufnik. And he's walking down the street one day, and he's feeling very happy, and he's singing, the weather outside is terrible. Who's a schmo, who's a schmo, who's a schmo? You know, he's... And all of a sudden, he sees his old friend Goldberg. So he says, hello, Goldberg. He says, hello. He says, buenas noches, besame mucho. He says, what's cooking? So Goldberg is very sad looking. He said, oh, I'm dying to pieces. Oh, he says, Abe, he says, what happened to me shouldn't happen to me. He says, so what happened? You're looking so dismal and abysmal. Tell me what happened. He says, you don't know. Last night I went to the movies. He says, I saw a wonderful picture. Who hit Susie Slagle with a bagel? He says, I'm sitting there, I'm enjoying the picture. He says, when the lights go on, he says, right next to me was a beautiful, gorgeous blonde. And I had to be at the movies with my wife. He says, you call that trouble? He says, that's a difficulty? He says, don't think a thing about it. He says, let me tell you what happened to me. He says, last night I was at the movies with a beautiful, gorgeous blonde, and when the lights went up, sitting next to me was my wife.
1,000 on the laugh meter, Ward.
Automatically gives Mrs. Finkel $25 and puts you boys out just for laughs, and we only have a very few seconds. Let's see all the hands and see who I can get for just one quick joke. Harry Hirschfield had his hand
Well, there's
up
one
first.
that's running around quick. Is Mrs. Van Cleve Van Eppes gives a very swell party. Oh, terrific. The next day, she's very, very sad walking down the street. The neighbor said, what are you so sad for? I hear you gave a wonderful party. She said it was spoiled by one woman. She's the only one that came to my place in a cloth coat.
That's a gloomy gag.
Well, we could sneak a couple more like that in. I think we better, too.
I had to be the guy to put the hand up.
Well, let's see how Joe Laurie does.
I think I've got a real fast one. You want a real short one?
Yeah, real short.
Montgomery Epstein is in the sitting room there, and he's looking very bad. She says, what's the matter, Montgomery? He says, I feel so terrible, I could die right here. She says, you can't die here. He says, why can't I die here? She said, because this is the living room.
Well, a smart 600, Joe, but so far, Tempest has fidgeted. So as long as Mrs. Finkel had 1,000 anyway.
Aren't they lucky? I don't have to get them around.
So join us again next week, friends. Same time, same gangs. Other jokes, some new, some old. Until then, we'll remain yours for bigger and better laughs.
Senator Ford.
Harry Hirschfield.
Joe Laurie Jr.
Peter Donald.
Ward Wilson.
And this is your host, Roger Bauer, saying so long, and take care of yourself until we meet again next time.
Can you top this? Presented by the Colgate Palmolive Feet Company, makers of Colgate Dental Cream to clean your breath while you clean your teeth, and Palmolive Lather Shave Cream for a smoother, more comfortable way to shave. And here's Colgate Palmolive Feet Company's master of ceremonies, Dennis James.
Well, good evening, friends. Welcome to Can You Top This, our unrehearsed clown town, with Ward Wilson pinch hitting for Senator Ford.
Good evening.
Harry Hirschfield.
Howdy.
And Joe Laurie Jr.
Hello.
And here's the people's representative, our storytelling genius, Peter Donald, to tell the first joke of the evening, which comes from Mrs. Clara Giroux of Capac, Michigan. And it's on the subject of barber. You got it, everybody? Barbershop. Don't get clipped, Pete. Go ahead.
Used tonight. Well, it's about little Dennis James. He's age 7 years old, and they sent him to the barbershop for his first haircut. So the barber lifted the kid up in the chair.
He says, that's nice. Now, you be a good boy. He says, you sit there and me, Tony Lasagna, I'm going to give you good haircuts. Don't worry.
So he starts to work on the kid, and he took the electric clippers, and he ran it around the back of the kid's head. And the kid starts bawling. He goes, ah! Tony says, please, don't do that. I'm an ojo. You don't just sit there. So he goes with the electric clipper again. As soon as he touches it to the kid goes, ah! He says, please, don't do that. You make me jump, you know. I'm going to cut your hair down to your knees if you don't watch out. Please. Don't do that. Shut up, that's all. As soon as he touches the kid with the electric clipper again, ah! Tony says, please, wait a minute. So what's the matter for you, please, eh?
Kid says, well, gee, my mama told me if I didn't wash my neck good and clean, she would spank me. And I scrub my neck, but I guess it ain't clean enough. He says, well, what makes you think your neck is dirty? He says, because you had to use that vacuum cleaner on it.
Well, I don't know why you're looking so sour, Pete. The vacuum cleaner or no vacuum cleaner was a clean sweep. You made a big 1,000 on that Colgate Palmolive Laugh Meter. You're out in front with $25 for Mrs. Giroux, so the three wits will have to just try to tie it. Harry Hirschfield is first.
Well, one I haven't heard in years is a barber had an awful day, playing the races. Every 2 minutes he'd get the report in the race and he'd take a drink. And he was getting drunker by the minute. And in walks one of those ministerial guys to get a shave. And he gets in this guy's chair of all chairs. And as he gets in the chair, he gets a whiff of the liquor, but he doesn't say anything because he's under the razor now. And this guy is getting these, and he's been drinking, and he's thinking of the races, and he's giving this guy a shave, and he's beginning to cut him, and he's shaving and wobbling all over him, and he's shaving him, cut him. And finally, this fella feels something, and he looks up, and he sees a little blood. He looks up, and the place is all his face is cut. He says, now, you see the effect of liquor. He says, yes, it makes the face very, very tender.
Yes, just a shade tender, Harry. That was 900 up there in the Colgate Palmolive Laugh Meter, but we'll see who's next. Ward Wilson right there.
I was thinking of the gag that the late beloved Mark Hellinger gave me credit for as an original story a few years ago about the fellow who was in the barber shop getting everything from soup to nuts, and he was all covered with steaming towels and everything, and the manicurist was working on him, and the shoe shine boy was working on his shoes. And all of a sudden, right in the midst of this thing, with all the steam coming up and everything, some guy bursts in the door of the barber shop, and he says, hey, Machiavelli, your house is on fire. With that, this guy jumps out of the chair, the towels are flying in every direction, the manicurist loses all of her tools all over the floor, dashes out of the store of the barber shop, runs down the street like crazy for about 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. Finally, he's getting out of wind. He gets down to the 5th block, and he stops on the corner all of a sudden. He's panting and puffing. He looks around. He says, wait a minute. What am I running for? My name's not Machiavelli.
Maybe not Machiavelli, but you certainly matched that gag as told by Peter Donald, Ward, because it was up there solidly for a 1,000. And, of course, that puts Little Joe from Kokomo right in the middle.
Well, there's a lot of barbershop gags. The one I like very much is the one about my friend Montgomery. He goes into this barbershop and says, shave, please. So he gets in the chair. The fellow says, close shave? He says, yeah, stand near me. So he shaves him, and this fellow goes, oh. Finally, he gets all through, and Montgomery gets up, and he looks over in the mirror, looks at his face, and looks at his face. Barber sees him looking, he says, what's the matter, too close? Did I shave you too close? He says, well, I want to tell you something, buddy. One thing I'm sure, I didn't have these dimples when I come in.
Well, that was a typical Laurie story. A mighty cute, Joe. You know what it got up there? A big 1,000, the Colgate Palmolive Laugh Meter. So that completes the first round. Pete got $25 from Mrs. Giroux. So sending Mrs. Giroux the $25 with the compliments of Palmolive shave creams, plus a phonograph record of Peter Donald telling her story on the air. And now, here's Dan Donaldson with the biggest shaving news in history.
Men, if you like oceans of rich, thick, moisture-soaked lather, try the new, different Palmolive Lather way to shave. A way that means smoother, more comfortable shaves for 3 men out of every 4. Yes, the new Palmolive Lather Shave Cream way brings smoother, more comfortable shaves to 3 men out of every 4. It's a fact, men, not a promise. 1,251 men tried the new Palmolive Lather way to shave, and no matter how they shaved before, 81% reported beards easier to cut. 76% said less razor pull. 71% said closer shaves. 80% smoother feeling skin. And 3 men out of every 4 reported smoother, more comfortable shaves the Palmolive Lather Shave Cream way. Here's all you do. Wash your face with soap and water. Rinse. Soap your face thoroughly again. And do not rinse. Brush Palmolive Lather upward into beard to get the full benefit of Palmolive Lather Shave Cream's beard conditioning effect. Then shave. That's all, but you be the judge. Get Palmolive Lather Shave Cream and try the new, different Palmolive Lather way to shave. Remember, it's proved. Proved to give smoother, more comfortable shaves to 3 men out of every 4.
Okay, that's Can You Top This from radio. I believe there's a version of Can You Top This closet.
All right, gentlemen, let's continue with our contest of wit and humor. And here's a joke which was sent in by Mrs. W.C. McGinty of Dallas, Texas. And the subject is amazement. Everybody's ready, so Peter Don will take off, huh?
Well, it seems that 2 fellas were traveling through the hillbilly country, and everywhere they looked, when they were near the small town, everywhere they looked, they saw evidences of perfect shooting. There were on the trees, the walls, the fences, there were all these bullseyes and bullet holes in absolutely the center of every bullseye. And they measured this thing. This guy was shooting right in the center. So they decided to find who was doing this. They went to the general store, walked in there, and the proprietor came out.
Said, howdy, boys, what can I do for you?
Said, well, mister, he said, my friend and I were strangers in these parts, and we notice all over the place evidence of great marksmanship. Now, the 2 of us, we think we're pretty good shots, but we've never seen anything as amazing as this.
So he says, well, I'll tell you, gentlemen, he says, you see that fella sitting down there in the back of the store right by them Sears Roebuck cuspidors? That's the fella that did it. Why don't you go over and meet him?
So they did. They went over, introduced themselves, and again, one of the city fellas remarked on this great marksmanship. He says, I tell you frankly, sir, he says, I don't know where you learned to shoot, but I never saw such marksmanship. He says, tell us, how do you do it? And this big guy stretched, he says, how do I do it? Why, he says, it's just as plumb easy as pie. He says, first I shoot my gun at the trees and walls and fences, and then I draw the circles around the bullet holes.
It started off slowly, Pete, but you hit the bullseye. That was a 1,000 on the Colgate Palmolive Laugh Meter. Boys, you just know that you're going to have to work to try to tie it. Little Joe is first this time.
Well, Pete reminded me with this hillbilly story. This is sort of a new one on me, I don't know. About this hillbilly never was to a city before. And he comes to the town, he gets to a hotel where a friend of his lived, a city fella. And this fellow was so happy to see him. He says, well, you see, I came back from the hills, he says. I'm glad you looked me up, he says. I'll tell you what you do. I've got to go around and do a little business now. But look, here's the key to my room. Go up there. There's a good bottle of scotch there. Make yourself at home. Just make yourself at home. I'll be right back. I'll be back in about half hour or so. He says, okay. And showed him how to take the elevator and went up to his room. Fella comes back about a half hour. He says, comes in the room. He says, how'd you like the scotch? He says, scotch was all right, he says, but that siphon that you had, that water there, that siphon, he says, I never saw such fizz water in my life. He says, why? I never saw such fizz water go through. You know, that thing come out so fast, it nearly knocked me out of the window. He says, the fizz water? He says, I have no siphon here. He says, sure, you know that thing, that red thing with the brass rings around it. He says, that was the fire extinguisher.
It was as hot as a Kiwani boiler, Joe, but not quite hot enough for a fire, so it got a 950.
That's hot enough. It's summertime, remember.
Summertime. All right, Ward, go ahead.
I was thinking the one about the little fella up in the Bronx who walked into a delicatessen rather bashfully, and he looked at this big counter of cut meats and ham and everything in the case. So finally he looks at the Swiss cheese, and he says, pardon me, how much is the Swiss cheese? Says, $1.25 a pound. Says, how much you getting for the tongue? Says, $1.10 a pound. Says, how much for the cold roast beef slice? Says, that's $1.40 a pound. Just then, down the bottom of the case, he spies this great big boiled ham.
So he points down to that and he says, pardon me, how much you get for this? And just then there's a terrific bolt of lightning and a crash of thunder, and he looks at the door and he says, for goodness sake, I'm only asking.
Well, Watson, you're only asking and I'm only telling. That was a 1,000. Harry, that kind of put you in the last slot.
Yeah, there was a husband and wife always fighting. The minute they got together, within range of each other, they'd start fighting and socking each other and everything. It went on this quarrel for years, and finally their son, their only son, couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't stand their quarreling, so he left home. A few years later, a fella came and says, you know, your mother died. He says, my mother died, I'll pray for her. A few years later, they came to him again and says, your father died. And the fellow said, my father died? And he says, aren't you going to pray for him? He said, no. He says, I stand here amazed and shocked. I'm looking at you in amazement. You won't pray for your father? You prayed for your mother, didn't you? He says, yes. And my prayers, I know because of my prayers for her, she's at this moment in heaven. He says, why don't you want to pray for your father? Why should I bring them together again to start the whole thing over again?
Well, you made two ends meet. You know that Colgate Palmolive laugh meter starts off at 0. That's one, then, Harry, and you went way past the other end, which is 1,000. So we complete another round, and this time Pete got $25 for Mrs. McGinty. Also, she's getting the Palmolive shave creams and a phonograph record of Peter Donald telling her story on the air. Did you hear the way I said that? I gave her shave creams. I don't know what she's going to do with them. But at any rate, it was the $25 with the compliments of Palmolive shave creams. Let's go on, boys. But before we do go into another round, since we're getting things straight, I'd like to ask everybody to compete in this weekly gag fest. All jokes told by Peter Donald have been submitted by our listeners. So send your favorite joke to Can You Top This, care of NBC, New York, or the station to which you're listening. Now, of course, in cases of similarity, we'll have to be the sole judges of who is paid, and in every case, the decision of the judges is final. Laughs are registered on the big Colgate Palmolive laugh meter in full view of the studio audience. And our three wits have no scripts. They rely on memory and ability to switch jokes to make them fit the subject. You ready, gentlemen? Then let's continue with laughs. The next joke comes from Mrs. Sadie Dorsey of Manchester, Connecticut, and it's on the subject of rudeness. I'm sure that's clear to everybody, so Peter, take it.
Well, it seems that a bus slid to a stop at an intersection, and a voice from the back of the bus said, "Now, wait a minute. No, don't. Hold the doors. I got to get off. Hold everything there." So the driver says, "How am I supposed to know you want to get off? Did you ring the bell?"
He says, "Did I ring the bell? Did I? I've been tolling it. I thought you were dead or something."
Bus driver says, "Well, then why wasn't you standing there at the door ready to get off?"
He says, "What's all the questions? Now, what are you running, a quiz program or something?"
"All right, Dr. O'Pugh, I'll tell you if you want to know. It took me a long time to rise from me seat because me lap is full of bundles." Guy said, "Oh, is that so?" He says, "Well, buddy, all I can suggest is that if you would eat some yeast, maybe you would rise quicker."
He says, "Oh, you're a comedian now, are you?" He said, "If I'd eat yeast, maybe I'd rise quicker."
Well, he says, "Let me tell you something, you spalpeen. If you take some yeast for jabbers, you might be better bred."
You doed it, Peter. You doed it. Colgate Palmolive laugh meter reads 1,000, so we take off to the wits who'll have to try to tie it. I see only one hand up this time, too, and it belongs to Hirschfield, so go ahead, Harry.
Well, I was thinking of, rudeness and the way children are brought up today, the growing delinquency. I think this story fits. 4 boys are brought into court, rushed in by the cop, and the judge looks at one of them and he said, "What are you here for?" He says, "For throwing peanuts in the lake." He said, "The second one, and you?" He said, "The same thing, for throwing peanuts in the lake." And he said, "The third one, and you, what are you in here for?" He says, "For throwing peanuts in the lake." He turned to the fourth one, he said, "What are you here for?" He says, "I'm peanuts."
1,000. Big, strong, full, and long-lasting, Harry. Ward, do you want to try to follow that one?
It's a silly place to walk in, I know that. I was thinking, I think one of my favorite stories comes under rudeness. These two colored boys were given a job to remove a safe up in Harlem. They had practically no equipment. One great big guy and one little bit of a fella. So the big guy finally put a beam on the second floor of the building. They put a pulley on that, and they put a rope through it. And the big fella says, I'll go into place here and put the rope around the safe. He says, you go down there on the sidewalk and hold on to end the rope, and when I ease the safe out the window, he says, you just hold it and let it down easy. He says, all right, I'll do it. So he goes out on the sidewalk. He's holding on to the rope, and the big guy gets up on the second floor, and he lets his safe out very easily, and all of a sudden it slips, crashes to the sidewalk, and the little guy forgets to let go of the rope. He goes all the way up to the top, and his head hits the beam, and he's get knocked off and down on his back, out cold on the sidewalk. So the big guy rushes down the steps out to the sidewalk, and he turns him over. He says, Sam, speak to me. Sam, speak to me. In the muscle moving, he says, Sam, please, you got to speak to me. Just then the little guy's eyes flutter open. He says, speak to you. He says, I tipped my hat to you going up and coming down. You didn't even say hello.
You didn't have to finish the punchline, Ward. It was up past the 1,000 halfway through. Joe, I hate to keep putting you on the spot, but it's yours.
This one is about this very hoity-toity relative. Well, I know how toity she was. She was over 30, I know that. But she came over to visit this relative of hers, and this fellow with his wife and about 10 kids and everything. So he asked her to stay for supper. So she sits down, and she's very, very neat, looks around. And during the course of the meal, this fella burps. And she says, oh, how rude. She says, tell me, John, are you in the habit of doing this before your children? He says, we ain't got no timetable. Sometimes I do it before them, sometimes I do it before them.
Well, looking up at the Colgate Palmolive laugh meter, Joe, it tells a rosy story. In fact, the color was purple. Yeah. You got a 1,000. Makes it a perfect round all the way around. 4 1,000s. So we're going to send Mrs. Dorsey $25 with the compliments of Colgate Dental Cream, plus a phonograph record of Peter Donald telling her story on the air. And now here's Ron Rawson with an important message.
Colgate Dental Cream cleans your breath while it cleans your teeth. No other toothpaste does a better job of cleaning teeth than Colgate Dental Cream. For Colgate Dental Cream has a safe polishing agent that cleans your teeth both gently and thoroughly, brings out their natural sparkle and beauty. You can actually see and feel the difference. And scientific tests prove that Colgate Dental Cream cleans your breath while it cleans your teeth. Yes, actual scientific tests prove conclusively that in 7 out of 10 cases, Colgate's instantly stops unpleasing breath that originates in the mouth. Colgate Dental Cream is famous for its wonderful wake-up flavor, too. Nationwide tests of leading toothpastes prove that Colgate is preferred for flavor over every other brand tested. Yes, preferred over every other brand tested. And no wonder, for Colgate Dental Cream is the result of constant effort to produce the finest toothpaste in the world today. For cleaning teeth, for flavor, for sweetening breath. So see if you don't agree with the millions who have made Colgate Dental Cream America's favorite toothpaste. Try Colgate Dental Cream to bring out the natural sparkle and beauty of your teeth for a wake-up flavor you'll thoroughly enjoy. And always use Colgate Dental Cream after you eat and before every date to clean your breath while you clean your teeth.
Now we go round and around. This time the joke is sent in by Harry L. Cools of Erie, Pennsylvania. And it's on the subject of clerk. I don't care where it is, what store, bank, or anything, but just clerk. Peter?
Well, it just happens this happened in Grand Central Station at the information booth, and a lady walked up to the desk, and the fellow was there, and she walked up and kind of cute, and she said, "Oh, clerk, oh, clerk." He said, "Yes, madam." He says, "You want information?"
She says, "So why else would I come to an information booth to buy a girdle or something? Certainly I want information. I just got off the train. I just came from Chicago, and was I on a gorgeous choo-choo train? Was this a train? They call it the 20th century liniment. Is this a... So I got to visit my cousin in New York, and the question I want to ask you, the information is, do you know a woman in this town by the name of Cohen?"
The guy says, "What? Do I know anyone in town by the name of Cohen?" He says, "Do you think I know everyone in New York?"
She says, "No, Mr. Smarty Pants, I didn't think you would know everyone in New York. But I did think that any schlemiel would know at least one person."
joke sent in by people, Pete. I'm sorry, but it did not do it. You want to take it again? Change it at the end? I have to tell Harry Cool exactly what the score was, Pete. If you don't want to listen, it's all right. I don't want to upset you for the whole evening. It wasn't too bad. 600. So you got an average. You got a 400 leeway. Let's see, Ward is first.
I thought of a couple on clerks, Denny. One is kind of a quick one I tossed in for nothing about the fellow who worked behind the goods counter, yards good counter, and this hoity-toity woman came over and said, pardon me, may I see that bolt up there? So he hikes up this ladder and brings the bolt down, shows it to her, and she isn't very impressed. He said, may I see that one up there, please? So he goes up the ladder again, brings another bolt down. About a half hour, he has bolts all over the counter. There's only one bolt left up on the top of the shelf. He said, look, lady, pardon me, are you interested in any of these things? She said, no, to tell you the truth, I'm just waiting here for a friend of mine. He said, well, if you think she's up in that last bowl, I'll go up and get it for her.
That was just a throw-in, wasn't it, Ward?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other story is about the sort of a goofy guy working a delicatessen, and this woman, little matronly old lady, came in. She said, pardon me, how much is butter? Says, 84 cents a pound. Said, how much would a half pound be? Said, that would be 42 cents. Said, well, how much would a quarter of a pound be? That would be 21 cents. Said, well, how much would an eighth of a pound cost? Said, that would be 10 and a half, 11 cents. She said, well, how much would a 16th of a pound cost? Just wait a minute, lady. Go home and get the slice of bread and bring it over. I'll butter it here.
You were sly with it, too, because you got a big, round, long one that time. The Colgate palm on the margarine read a 1,000. What'd you say?
On the margarine.
Yes, margarine. By a good margarine, huh? Harry, take it.
Well, I heard one that I think is a kind of a newie. A little home, an old-fashioned home, decided to make it like a colonial home and get people there for a summer resort. And the first person that comes there is a big, fat dame about 500 pounds. And the clerk says, boy, she'll lead us out of home, certainly, into this place. So they took her. It's the first customer. They wanted some publicity anyhow. And she goes up into the bed to sleep, and right away she sinks the bed right to the bottom. So she comes down in the morning. She said, I can't sleep in that bed. I got to have another bed that's sunk to the bottom. He said, that's all right. We can make money because of this. We're going to send out publicity that Washington slept there with his horse.
I thought maybe you'd just thrown that in. Oh, yeah, well, good. Go ahead.
Well, the one I always love is the one about there was a clerk, and he had one leg shorter than the other. And he was back at the counter, and a drunk comes in. And he said, I'd like to see a kind of a red kimono. And the fellow said, red kimono? He said, yes, I want to see a red kimono. So he showed him a couple of kimonos. Said, ain't that? He said, I'd like to see a blue one. So the clerk with the short leg sinks down on his other leg. And the drunk says, if you have to go downstairs don't bother.
The story goes down, but the meter goes up. That's another 1,000, and of course, Joe, it's your honor.
Well, they're all been throwing them in. This is one that's just for free, too. This is about the fellow that comes into this department store. He says to the clerk, he says, are those good socks on the counter there? He says, are they good socks? They've been on the counter for 2 weeks, and there ain't a hole in them yet. That's for free. The one I like, though, is one that's sort of new to me. The fellow comes in to the store, and the clerk says, what can I do for you? He says, how much is that collar button? He says, a collar button, it says, is $18.50. He says, $18.50? He says, I forgot to tell you there, a tie goes with it, a hat, a shirt, socks, and a pair of shoes. He says, I don't want that. All I want is the collar button. He says, I'm very sorry. We don't break up sets.
I kind of hate to break up this set. There, three of you told your jokes, and it was about 6 1,000s in there. Officially, we're all 1,000s. Anybody want to see if they can keep it up? Go ahead, Harry.
Well, I was just thinking of another barber story.
Way back to the first round? Go ahead.
There was a barber he was telling a friend, he said, He said, we have a fine idea. He said to the boss now, says we have music with the work. That's all the factory's doing now. When we shave, we have music. And he said, we got to find a record there, and it's beautiful. We shave very slow on the face, and we're forever blowing bubbles. He said, it's wonderful. So next week, fella said, you still got music there? He said, yeah, we got the music, but we're losing the customers. I said, what do you mean? He said, the customers are losing their nose and their ears. He said, on account of the music? He said, yeah, the boss is kind of greedy. It was very fine, he said, when we had, I'm forever blowing bubbles. Now he put on another record. Yankee Doodle, we're not down.
I suppose you want to go to the second round, Ward, but all right. Ward was going to stop.
Oh, pardon me. Harry, going back to Barber reminds me of one that happened down the Lambs Club with Charlie, our barber down there. I was sitting back listening to the ball game, getting a shave the other day, and he's in the middle of it. He says, Mr. Wilson, pardon me. He says, you been eating a borscht? I said, what? He said, you been eating a borscht? I said, no, I haven't been eating borscht. He said, oh, I think I cut you.
That I like, Ward.
Talking about a guy being cut. A friend meets a fella, and he says, all cut up. So what's the matter? Shave yourself? He said, no, I went to a barber. He said, if you went to a good barber, you wouldn't be cut up like he said. I went to the best bar. What are you talking about? I went to a hotel, a big hotel, a barbershop, and a hotel. He says, what hotel did you go to? They couldn't cut you. He says, Yimka. He says, where? He said, I went to the Yimka Hotel. He says, where is it? He says, on 12th Street. He says, so I've been around 12th. I never heard of the Yimka. He says, Yimka, there's a big sign there. YMCA. Yimka.
Imka, we're going to stop right in here and give the score at least, fellas, before we do wind up activities. You know that Mr. Cole's only got a 600. Our three wits got about 12,000 1,000s.
So we're going next week.
We're going to send Mr. Cole's $10 with the compliments of Colgate Dental Cream and a copy of that laugh-packed and brand-new joke book, Cream of the Crop, written by our three wits. You want to say something, Harry? Go ahead.
Got time for another barber story?
All right, we've got about 20 seconds if you think you can...
You're talking about 20 seconds. I was reading the papers of everybody. I've been reading all day. I've always noticed in the papers that people flee from Russia. Every time somebody flees from Russia. I never read where anybody flees to Russia. You like it,
That took up the 20 seconds. So, friends, that just about does it. Remember... his old discarded joke, and we're going to pick up and pack up. Join Can You Top This, originated by Senator Ford. Next week, same time, same gang. Other jokes, some new, some old. Until then, we'll remain yours for bigger and better laughs.
Ward Wilson batting for Senator Ford.
Harry Hirschfield.
Joe Rush and Laurie Jr. Peter Donald.
Dennis James.
And Dan Donaldson saying goodnight for the Colgate Palmolive Teeth Company, makers of Colgate Dental Cream to clean your breath while you clean your teeth, and Palmolive Lather Shave Cream for a smoother, more comfortable way to shave.